What's up, everybody? What up, Anthony? What up, Jen? What up, Ellie? Whoever else is joining us. I swear I had the shot. It was looking amazing. It's like, let me check the weather. Looked clear. Went live, and the clouds moved in. So, pretty funny. It's all good, I think. It's gonna get better. Hope everybody's had a great day. 9:15, South Florida. Should have Jupiter and Saturn and the moon for at least a couple hours. I was thinking about reading a bit of Saturn cosmology and the electric universe from everythingiselectric.com. Some of the Thunderbolts project links. But let's just settle in for a bit. such a tease tonight. So it is there, just like a couple of layers of fog. I think it's just where it is. So what's up there, Mary? What's up, Genghis? Genghis. We got a small group right now, but it's very chill. French moon brew, huh? Nice. I've got this Costa Rican brew that's already ready, but it's just chilling in the freezer for a second. I love when it turns into icicles, just the last part of a cup. It'll be just enough to get through the show. Yeah, lots of water. It's crazy hot today. It feels like a microwave. Before the show, or at least before, I don't know, maybe a little bit earlier than that even, I was listening to a big part of the Electric View, which I put in my likes playlist. It's the last video. Really interesting chat with the guys, and I wasn't on it, but I was just listening. And yeah, check that out if you're interested in some Proto-Saturnian myth and real deep dives on tangents about it. As well as the description has a whole bunch of other links to different channels: Electric Terra Vision, Electric Universe Eyes, Kronos, Reg J, who's already growing pretty big. All good stuff. Of course, Thunderbolts Project. What up, Light Moon? How you doing? Always take the opportunity to extend the Electric Universe paradigm, even if it's just a little bit. And you guys have heard me say it a million times. Alright, let's get some energy going. So I updated, or I'm in the process of updating Bandcamp, finally. It's been sitting there for 2 years, rotting on the vine, on the space vine, but today I updated a little bit, and tomorrow I'm going to add some new tracks. So this week, new tunes. I'll play something completely new, which is really different. Yeah, this is some faux jazz. Let's do it. It's called Friday Won't End. That was a new one. What's up, everybody just joining? We got MM. And let me know if I missed you. No, that's it. Cool. Yeah, pretty chill night, just waiting for this moon. I have faith that it will yield. So we're going to be patient. Thanks for hanging out. Desperate times. So I reverted to some footage from yesterday. I'll just keep an eye outside. As soon as it clears, I'll get to the live view. Thanks for hanging out, guys and gals and everybody. What's up, William Smith? What's up, ready to hit hot fire? Just jamming some new tunes for y'all. I'm gonna put all of these up on Bandcamp over the next few days, whatever condition they're in. And they'll all be like, name your price. I've been promising it forever, but it's happening. Promise. Tonight. No. This weekend. By this weekend, for sure. By the full moon. By the full moon. I keep pushing the deadline back like the Apollo mission, like the moon missions. Promise by 2024 I'll have the album out. Yes, the universe is electric. Heck yeah, shockwave. Since everybody just joining, yo, what's up, Tim Martin? Thanks. This is the 20-ish% waxing crescent from yesterday, around the same time. So hopefully we'll get the same sort of, well, slightly more advanced view. But what's really interesting from this shot is that Marycrisium looks hexagonal. It's so crazy. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about with Marycrisium, but for those who don't, I'm gonna label it. And I can't believe it's kind of the first time I've noticed it. And it's strange because we do look at Marycrisium at like all the time on different levels of magnification. And this is kind of really one of the first times it's kind of jumped out at me as being hexagonal. Genghis Khan says, ring ring, yeah, hello harp, can you clear the sky over Florida, please? Thanks. Actually, yeah, exactly, that's what I should have brought it up earlier, but honestly today, like, I'm just gonna say it because who cares, I've said everything on this channel, but man, the people who don't think that chemtrails are real just need to see like yesterday's sky and then today's sky, and for no particular reason you got like crazy layers of clouds tonight with gross, like weird intersecting lines and shadows. It's just so obvious as to like, or whatever they're called, if they're like, maybe they're not chemtrails, but they're trails that are not contrails, that don't dissipate. So there's something going on with weather. Anyway, so that's the thickness that we see tonight. I didn't think it was too bad earlier, but then as soon as I went live, like about 25 minutes ago, like this weird thick layer up at like 30 degrees, and then like another thin layer of haze and clouds. Like that looks sort of normal. I think like maybe it's just heated up, but man, it's crazy cooking. That's all I gotta say. Sorry, I feel like I haven't been talking as clearly as I could have. Leaning back in the chair. Western Pennsylvania Skywatcher, sorry I missed your comment. Welcome. Sunset here in Western Pennsylvania is mostly masked with clouds which refracted the sun rays in beautiful colors. Yeah, there is that kind of spectral shifting sometimes. Depends on like which way, but I've seen some crazy rainbows lately. Honestly, it's so intense. Yo, what's up, Mistaken Mystery? Thank you. Love you back. Carolina Sky Astronomy, what's up, brother? Hello from North Carolina, where it's raining cats and dogs right now. I gotta keep an eye on the scope. Speaking of which, this is footage from yesterday. Let's see if these clouds have moved any bit. Yeah, not even a peak. It's crazy. I'm still going though. I got at least 30 minutes of waiting in me. Yeah, sorry about that. I realized that the setup is not optimal to speak over. think that's better? I think it's better. For question. So anyway, thanks for hanging out, everybody. I want to talk about, I want to go through a few things. One was just I want to read a little bit of stuff from this Everything is Electric EU Theory Saturn Polar Configuration. I'm gonna drink first. And the other thing is to just reference the Electric View, the show that they just had is in my liked playlists. And if you guys are interested and you haven't seen the Electric View or heard it, this past show was really good. So let's see. It doesn't look like it's gonna rain though, but it definitely has this crazy kind of altitude layer of grayness. And then these big white, like not illucent clouds. Naughty lucent. Yeah. Man, it is just so hot that your brain stops working sometimes when you look at three things. All right. So I wanted to read just a little bit. Let's see. Saturn cosmology and the electric universe. The electric universe theory appears to be split into distinct parts. The main two parts are very serious and scientific space set aside that is about interpreting and explaining the universe from a plasma point of view. Plasma is ionized gas, electrically charged gas that makes up about 99.5% of everything we see in the universe, hence the electric universe. Based and developed on the works of Hannes Alfvén and plasma cosmology, Anthony Peratt, Christian Birkeland, and others. That was the wrong inflection, but whatever. The other main part of the EU theory is what may be best described as plasma mythology. It is based on plasma cosmology and the electric universe, but is also heavily influenced by ancient texts, mythology, and cultural lore that describe a very different and active solar system. Another massive influence in the origin of its work, another massive influence in the origin of its works is Immanuel Velikovsky. See. So I feel like that's a little bit dry, to be honest, but it kind of sets up this whole, I don't know, it feels actually very dry. So I would recommend everybody actually checking out the Thunderbolts project instead and seeing the videos they put together. I've linked them in my description. And for me, it's more about this holistic theory of everything is interconnected and everything is this fractal universe at different levels. And so I've always wanted to talk about it and kind of make graphics to set this up, but I tend to kind of stream live footage, and I feel like that's really important at the same time. So I've been considering trying to make some sort of graphical interpretation of electric universe paradigms. And so I wanted to pose that to the chat and see if you guys think that that's like something I should spend time doing, or is it more important to actually like show real footage of space as much as possible? And that's why I come back to it all the time. It also seems like pre-recorded stuff is fun, but seeing live footage, even though right now, like exactly, it doesn't have the same appeal as seeing what's actually happening. So let me know what you think in the chat. I'll listen to this song. Right back. I'm gonna take a little quick peek outside, and I'll be right back. What's up, Corey Connolly? Live. Shockwave says, come talk with us on Discord. Would you mind, which Discord, or like actually just, would you mind sending me a TakeBackSpace at Gmail link? And I'll set that up. I've actually been thinking about getting into Discord, so I just have to kind of put my energy there. Matter is energy. As soon as I said that, it just popped up. That's pretty funny. But that's the lag. All right, defocused, I think, a star right here on your screen from pre-recorded footage from yesterday. But I'm gonna check what the skies are doing right now and see if our moon is in view. That. We got some moon, we got some really cool, really dope. Really gotta record that when you get those. This reminds me of a session that I had. I have a whole series of photos that are exactly like this, but a different phase. So incredible when you recognize very rare patterns. Yeah, so this is live, in case you didn't recognize. My mic volume is really low. I'm sorry. Post my email. It's in the description of the video and the first page of the channel, but I can also post it. Right, so I started off on a whole story about the electric universe and then read some kind of really strange mission statement. So I'm going to return it to my natural flow, which is just that it's so interesting to listen to the Electric View guys talk about visualizing the proto-Saturnian system from an earthbound perspective, right? Actually, I realized, before I go off on this tangent, I asked y'all if I should do graphics. So let's see. Ginga says, I think if I find joy in it, do it. It's all good. Come talk with us on Discord. Can I make the music volume lower? Okay, I think I'm all caught up. I think so. Alright, so it's not fully clear, but yeah, so listening to the Electric View guys talk about visualizing the purple dawn and how really, what was it? It was also Greg J talking about Neanderthals with I think the same guy who was on the Electric View. And there are all these images and renders of this this kind of Earthscape inside the brown dwarf system. And then he kind of referenced, I know what it was, so I'm just recalling, it was like a 3-hour show, so I just listened to it and I'm trying to pick it apart. So they're talking about how he's in his 70s, and he feels like it's much more important to kind of structurally create historical events. And he actually knows Wal Thornhill and David Talbot. And it's almost impossible for me to kind of synopsize this whole 3-hour discussion that they had. He was talking about a lot of different ideas, but I think one of them that kind of got me thinking was the whole idea of like, what do we really know about the history of Earth? What do we really know about the history of mankind? How do electrical events from the sky affect DNA? Is evolution or, branching and variance, is that due to electricity? In my opinion, it is. And things like that are really fascinating to rethink kind of what do we really know about Earth while also looking at the moon. So I feel like looking at the moon kind of gives you this perspective that we can't really have of a live Earth. even though, you know, you could turn on the ISS channel and kind of watch that whole thing go by, but there's really no way to be zoomed out and constantly get a live shot of what Earth looks like with the space as backdrop. And so I feel like the moon gives us that mirror, and it kind of goes through all these different stories every night. I feel like that's something really important, and I think I'm going to try and represent kind of potentially this whole moon and Mars interaction with some sort of graphic, but I'm still thinking about it and just mulling over ideas. The other one was the fact that the Proto-Saturnian system, the plasma sheath, looked like an egg, and there's all these stories about the cosmic egg cracking, and that really makes a lot of sense if you kind of visualize almost all plasma sheaths around every planet or star possibly are being pushed and pulled from different directions from either magnetic force fields or solar wind pushing against them, or other planetary wind, quote unquote wind, electrical discharge or energies intermingling, right? And they also move along perfect geometries in a lot of areas. So they're also breaking apart and then snapping. Magnetic reconnection is what it's called. But there are also debates around that. Hey, am I all over the place tonight? I definitely am. But I think we got a moon in sight, so I'm gonna set it up a little bit better. What's up, Sensei Camilo? And we need a telescope on the moon. Hell yeah, like that would have been the first thing if I had control of the Apollo missions. But I lost interest. No, I'm kidding. How do people lose interest? I love that line. It's always bugged me about the whole conspiracy world. Actually, let me fix the ISO first. First, default settings. There we go. Shockwave says, that 70-year-old guy is Michael Armstrong. Thank you. I'm really sorry. Like, yeah, today I'm a bit zoned out. It's been like sitting on the back porch watching all these, you know, like crazy sky airplane trails go by, like whatever you believe. And that really just like zones you out, man. I'm sorry. Like, it's hard to really stay super positive when when it feels like we have no control. And then of course I was also listening to the Electric View show at the same time and kind of pumping myself up and being like, man, like we have way more power than that. And just a small group of people can really affect change, because it's not about, you know, the masses. It's really about small core groups creating like really strong, powerful connections that emanate outwards. You know, multiplicative is the word that I'm stealing straight up from from Ken Wheeler. But I like that because he really insists upon it. And that's true. Like, when a bunch of people get along and are polite to one another and can really think together, cooperation in science is so lacking. It's so lacking. It's just not all. See, it's kind of measuring and gauging that sort of language. See, I already believe differently, and it's really hard to change language without stopping yourself almost every time and saying like, well, not everything is like that. You know, words matter. So it's like saying we're putting space junk when we're not. You know, a certain group of people is, and that's how you can, you know, problem solve with detail. Shockwave says, I'm Rick. So you're the host? Or I like to completely, I'm just being really lame right here, sorry. I have listened to it like at least, I don't know, 20 episodes, so I always feel like there's a whole host of people on, and I just leave it on in the background, so I'm not looking at who's talking. So if you're the host, hell yeah. If you're one of the people who talks all the time today, I'm really on board with a lot of what you guys are talking about. There's so many areas to cover, and what was it? They were talking about how like Armstrong was talking about how like John Cook, JNO Cook, was being kind of cagey and like a lone wolf, and how that, thanks Shockwave. I'll take a look. What was I gonna say? Yeah, how John Cook should have really kind of contributed and kind of joined forces, and I really am like completely behind something like that. That's really what's lacking today, I feel. Especially like the kind of, I really try very hard not to kind of call out and like point fingers, but there's this culture, I'm gonna power through it, but there's this culture on YouTube of like simplifying, oversimplification and selling. Obviously selling is always gonna be there. That's how you get funding for stuff. Unfortunately, that's the system as it is right now. Doesn't mean it can't change, but that's the system right now. But there really is this culture of like infantilizing viewers of science. And I think my contribution, at least, is I was thinking like I could contribute in so many ways, and I feel like a lot of these guys, these small channels right now, which are gonna grow to much larger channels, like I saw Greg J's channel with like no subscribers, and right now Electric Universe Eyes is growing, See the Pattern is growing, but you see these other channels that have 7 million views, and it is kind of demoralizing sometimes, right? The struggle is uphill. But then you consider kind of the physical manifestation of reality and how much power we potentially could have, the potential. I love that. All the EU people say electric potential. It's fucking hilarious. But not making fun. I love it. Shockwave says, yeah, he just wanted to do his own thing. JNO Cook was wrong in doing that. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. Like, you think, like, I feel like I'm lucky that I get to do like a day job that affords me the luxury of doing this without having to rely on it for income, right? If I didn't have the time to do that and I wasn't working for, like online, then but most people are working online. I was gonna say, like, it's not specific to me. Everybody's basically doing their jobs online. So like I'm online all day, get to intake information basically all day as I'm working, and then at night I get to indulge and not have to worry about making money and do this crazy science shit. Excuse my language, let me know if I'm too vulgar. Also, Duplicate, sorry, did I say what's up? I feel like I see so many of your awesome comments under the EU videos. It's like, it's so interesting how much content there really should be, and I guess their production team is really hamstrung or like limited by who can work on those videos. It always makes me feel like I want to like contribute to them in some capacity, but it's like hard enough to run my own thing. Like I just updated like the logo on the channel after 2.5 years, like the small graphic, so it's always a bit tough. And then secondarily, like I'm just talking about stuff right now, but I feel like secondarily or even primarily, ultimately, even the Electric View today, you guys talking about, what was it? Resonance, right? There's a whole sympathetic resonance potentially concept where our ancestors were able to kind of resonate objects. I think the Tellinger stuff was interesting, but even further than the Tellinger stuff, you realize that the bones in our bodies and in all creatures are hollow. So essentially, we're resonant. What are they called? Ring stones or bone rings, ring bones. Anyway, what else? I was almost there. I was gonna say that, yeah, so primarily or secondarily, the music that I'm that I'm able to bring to you guys for a small group of people is really meaningful, and especially pairing it with moon footage, calming music, indulgent music, music that doesn't pitch bend and do weird things. And I mean, sure, I do weird things in songs, but not, you know, like there's this kind of there's care, I guess, is what it is. It's like I want to listen to my music. I'm sick of music assaulting me, and I don't think we have a healthy way of talking about music in America, and probably in the whole world. It's this kind of, it's mired in really emotion, obviously, because it's so powerful. People are very emotional about music, and they're not able to talk about like the power of music or healing music or destructive music, the music like the virus music. So when I talk to people about certain artists that I say I can't listen to anymore, those who shall not be nameth, on this channel, but I'm sure I've said it before, but a lot of artists, almost all artists, and also the entire frequency of the compression. I don't know, for you tech nerd, audio tech nerds, you'll probably like this, but I think it's like, somebody did a whole analysis on the compression model of these certain tunes, and you know, I'm into music production, obviously, and when you really do that to a tune, you lose all dynamic range. And then further than that, the vocals are basically taken from, you know, a terrible singer singing things a couple of times, and then the producer having to really write an entire song from that. So that's really like where we get almost 90% of public music. And good bands are even, good bands are not even allowed to write their own songs in certain circumstances. Can you imagine like spending all this time trying to get signed, and then your record label is like, no, this guy who's written like 100 songs already that have been number ones, he's gonna write your songs. Like, are you really gonna say no? It's the same thing with doctors and holistic medicine, and they're not able to really approach that because really it goes against their corporate interests. So I think ultimately, so to get back to what I was saying, is that my contribution as live footage of space that's real and live, and really live, that whole kind of idea that it's current, and the word is not lost, the synchronicity of that word across so many dimensions, the current, the flow, the electrical current, and the concept of current being time and currency being the money that we use to coexist and to deal with one another. And probably so many other words emanate from that root. So I like to provide the sounds and the visuals and the vibe, and so I think that's my new kind of angle on TakeBackSpace, obviously with an Electric Universe angle, but I'm entertaining everything. As you know, today I was listening to the show, and so many topics were being touched upon, like I was mentioning earlier, like the age of Earth, like the size of Earth, like the idea of the sky cracking open. For a lot of the years, I thought like the whole reference to the sky cracking open was reference to like this firmament thing, and but really it's just misinterpreted stories placed at the wrong times in history. And so when that happens, the interpretations can become really mythological and scary and heightened, and people start believing any old thing. So while it's very, very interesting, I feel like that's something I just want to watch and kind of contribute what is really current with the moon right now. So, like, can you imagine if we saw a plasma phenomenon on the moon live? I feel like that would be the event, kind of, that people who had invested time on TakeBackSpace, or even me, to see some sort of like, well, to be honest, I felt this like for a while, but look at the geometry directly in front of you and tell me that like is impact related or just random impact phenomenon. Even directly in front of you, there's this object or this setup that I really haven't seen before, but there's a perfect square arrangement, and that's almost with a honeycomb hexagon right like embedded in the center of it. And then also Mare Crisium is also looking very angular. And even in a way like Chrysium and Proclus and Serenity almost have that kind of figure eight, infinity, double lobe. There's so much lunar geology beyond even capturing a live plasma event, which happens all the time on the sun, but on the moon it would be amazing. So yeah, so live footage, live tunes, and I'm gonna take a little quick break. My voice is still a little scratchy, but I'll toast to y'all. 10 p.m., South Florida, clear moon, clear damn moon. So patience always feels for you. Toasty. I got the fan running, and thankfully the fan is not affecting the scope too much. But the moon is definitely having its little peak time. I don't know. It seems like it might dip below this whole kind of cloud structure, but we'll see. Now it's just faded. Yo, thanks, Sensei. Got a band called Kim Mitchell. I got you. I'll hook that up. Bookmarked. Yeah, I don't know. Moon of Anisha. Let's see if I can see a quick shot of Jupiter for y'all. I'm gonna run. I'm gonna see if I can find a song real quick. Something that hasn't been played in forever. that was the key word to get me back on the mic. Somebody says rush, I'm back on the mic. No, for real though, man, I saw the Moving Pictures, the Moving Pictures tour, I don't know, what was it, like 8 years ago, up in New York, and they played the entirety of Moving Pictures, of course, and then also Subdivisions. So I was very happy. It's a 3-hour show, and they were in top form. I want to say at the Nikon Theater, Jones Beach, some corporate theater entity, but it was still unbelievable. So I love Rush so much. Favorite Rush track, probably Temple of Syrinx, and then Camera Eye, and then Witchcraft. Or is that called Witchcraft? I think it's Witchcraft. Anyway, gotta love it. Closer to the Heart, and Trees, and it's been a few years since I've gone deep on a Rush binge, but I certainly spent a fair amount of time doing it. Forgot to mention, we got Jupiter in View as the wide shot with the focal reducer, and we got an alignment of moons, Callisto far left, Ganymede, Europa, and then to the right of Jupiter and just on the edge is Io. So I want to say Rush is the absolute amazing band that they are, but if you said Yes versus Rush, I'd probably choose Yes at the end of the day. But even now, I'd probably not even choose Yes. I would be probably, what would I choose? I'd choose like Automatic Man, or if I could do it again, I'd do it over you. Like Caravan or like Camel. I don't know. Maybe I wore out all the famous bands a little bit. Yeah, but Rush is incredible on every level. They're just like super cool, and they keep playing. They define genres, and they've done their own thing. And their production value is super amazing every album. They almost write incredible albums every single time. Like a couple albums are not so super unbelievable amazing. All good. You wrote Subdivisions. All good. You're off the hook. Yeah, so Jupiter's clearing up a little bit. It's really a cool, like, foggy plasma experience. So I think a lot of people have a kind of weird reaction when I say plasma. They immediately think of blood. And I was trying to think of, again, listening to the show today, that, and always when I listen to Thunderbolt's project stuff or Electric Universe channels, branding and like the whole idea of presentation, I feel like while I love the au naturel experience, I think like really effectively Thunderbolt's project is pretty good, but we live in a world where like we want to reach people, and I think you have to come at it with the understanding of sound and understanding of interaction, people online, and like I'll give you a perfect example, like Duplicat, who's freaking awesome and always comments on the Thunderbolts videos. Michael Goodspeed never really replies to people, and while Thornhill doesn't reply to people, you know who does reply though? Who I freaking love reading comments from is Stephen Crothers. He goes on Sky Scholar videos and tackles people in the comments. and it's amazing to see. But like he's coming from a platform or like a standpoint of really knowing this thing about knowing how to really dissect black hole theory, Einstein's equations, Einstein's like math salad, and really kind of explain that bare bones to really anyone. Now, obviously, I've watched that video about like 20 times, or probably a lot more, and it still is sort of sinking in right now. Like, what are tensors? Like how did they come up with this? And really, you have to kind of spend the time to understand concepts before you can discard them. So I spend a lot of time doing that, where I just check and test the limits of every theory and concept that I think of at any given moment. I always give myself the chance to kind of dismiss it, and then I think about it. I'm like, no, I should really just look into how crystals are formed, or no, I should just look into what Kepler's third law is. Like, I know I saw the video a couple years ago, but like, what is Kepler's third law? Or, for example, like the Chip Arp, who is freaking amazing, really true heroes of astrophysics, I think, cosmology, and kind of just really stands out, I think, besides Velikovsky. Not to play favorites, but Halton Arp basically kind of really breaking down all these different galaxies with different redshifts and proving with observational science that redshift is pretty much due to heat and birth and life cycle, and not really due to distance. So same thing with blue shift, redshift. So this idea of this expanding universe is really not something that is stable, and people just argue it to hell, but the proof is already in the pudding. There's I'm gonna look it up right here. There's Seeing Red by Halton Arp. Just gonna get the book link over here, because this is really what people need to be working on in schools if we have any faith in that. Yo, what's up, Leo? Oera, love your channel. Thanks from Brazil. Ciao, Brazil. Hola. Hope you're doing well. Max Darrow, go to sleep. This is Jupiter while there are clouds over the moon, but I can actually go check on the moon right now. Shockwave says, if someone tells you nature does not do lines and angles, just tell them one word: crystals. Exactly. There's a whole crystal lattice thing that I want to share. I found it once. It's like 60s, 50s laboratory. The search term is like 50s, 60s laboratory crystal growth. And you'll see this, man, I'm really blanking on people's names tonight, but anyway, I'll find that link and post it. This is Jupiter, but it's also pretty hazy. I'll be back. Let's get some moon in view if we can. All right, that was a little stuff from Vibration Theater. Like I said earlier, I'm going to try and release some new tunes this week on Bandcamp. Stay tuned for that. And 8, 9, so a few days, there's going to be this Moon and Jupiter conjunction. And I realized today that I have a very cool Jupiter-Moon conjunction from the left, and this one's going to be Jupiter on the right. I think I can get it in the same frame. I might set up the 4-inch scope for this because like it'll be great to see Jupiter and the Moon. Yeah. But we'll get that. And then the Moon and Saturn will have a sort of close conjunction a few days later. And I think there's some meteor showers connecting on the 12th and 13th. I also want to start practicing for the Sun, but it definitely hasn't been the weather for that. But looking forward to the Mercury transit this year in November. Yeah, Shockwave is saying electrical machining. Shockwave says Valles Marineris on Mars is carved out by electrical arc that dug deep 9 kilometers down in a day or less. Olympus Mons was created in the same event. I really, honestly, like at this point, I totally believe that. I mean, it's tough for some people to swallow that type of information, but for me, because geology is more of a kind of interest and hobby. I'm sort of an amateur, not really geologist necessarily. And look at this crazy moon fog. Everyone's just like, it's just like massive toke smoke. It's the what is it? Local chimney stack. The local chimney. It's such a weird combination of terms. So yeah, Olympus Mons. I think probably Grand Canyon. You know what else I was looking at? The whole hexagonal rocks, the basalt columning. Have you ever looked at that sort of stuff? I mean, there are hexagons formed in nature. So if you look at crystal lattice structure, you'll see that electrical discharge growth, actually has intersecting hexagons that form around each other, like cellular growth. And if craters on moons, like Ceres and Mars and the Moon and Earth even, Earth probably has some sort of different surface for probably a host of different reasons. Probably the water dumped on it from Saturn. I think I'm probably going to go off on a tangent here, but there is this kind of disconnect for me where, so we're in the protosheath of the brown dwarf Saturn, and I like the idea of potentially the sun coming through with its own kind of solar dynamics on a Birkeland current, right? And then interacts with the brown dwarf Saturn, where I guess Mars is also within this brown dwarf. So what we see in the sky, really, maybe we don't see anything in the sky because it's so dim, right? Or possibly we see Mars go around. And what does really the core of Saturn look like? Is it the current setup that we see? And are the rings like the collapsed outer shell? So that's one thought I had. And then, the cosmic egg plasma sheath of the brown dwarf of Saturn tearing apart makes perfect sense. And possibly, what is this? Venus being birthed of Saturn as well. I guess what happens, right, is that you get this polar configuration, and that travels on for a while, and then something happens where you enter the heliopause of the sun, and Saturn has an overload, and right, that's where Venus is supposed to have been discharged from the center. Forget what the word you guys used, but anyway, I thought that was very interesting. I think that whole visual was sort of represented in, symbols of an ancient sky and remembering the end of the world. There are certain reconstructions that were done in the David Talbot documentaries. Seriously, my brain is all like fuzzed out on titles. Usually I'm pretty sharp about it, but I think it's those two titles. But there are reconstructions of the polar configuration that are pretty good, but and Thunderbolt's project does a good job has been doing a better job of kind of creating visuals that kind of really represent what they're talking about. Superimposing lightning to show kind of what electrical discharge really looks like, if that is what is missing. Yeah, so got a really pretty moon here. It's going to be coming down a little hard on the west, so trees and houses and fuzz, but still a beauty. So, yeah, Shockwave says, as Saturn was pulled into the sun's heliopause from the southern pole, right? The heliopause touched, then we saw the stars for the first time, right? Exactly. So the sheath around brown dwarf Saturn broke apart, or the cosmic egg cracked, so to speak, and then whoever was living on Earth, whatever species, whatever race, whatever type of animal or bacteria was on Earth, was instantly affected by this event. And I feel like that is such a crucial point of human history that is really not talked about correctly or almost at all. It's usually kind of, I always use the word mire, but mire is such a good word because these things exist, people do talk about them, but from really, it's usually sci-fi, or it's very jokey, or it's very, I don't know, it's always treated like a work of fiction rather than really investigated as proper science. And when I say that, people look at me, they're like, oh, well, who cares? And why does anyone care about this at all? But for me, I think it's so interesting to think about how few people really understand what the moon is or how it behaves. Maybe I don't even know what it is, but just that it exists and how it actually interacts with you. Same thing with Mercury retrograde. How many people talk about Mercury retrograde and know nothing about the physics involved? This strips people of empowerment. And I feel like, really embracing mythology as history gives people a stepping stone to their own understanding of the universe, and really just going past the History Channel and Discovery and newspaper articles and on and so forth, and go back to the stories of the ancestors, travel and listen to other people tell stories of their history. And really, I don't know if, does a small percentage of people exist who are going to do this, and then 99% of people are just going to exist to exist? Maybe that's the case, but it doesn't matter. Here, trying to do the work of carrying on some sort of critical thought and an assessment of current reality as we see it, whatever level of holographic density it is. But yes, Birkeland currents are fractal, coastlines are fractal, intelligence is probably fractal, people are really scared of talking about the word intelligent because it's associated with intelligent design. And I think there's this whole stigma in science. This is what I talk about all the time, but stigma, bullying, disrespecting people, as opposed to trying to work out and problem solve and cooperate, right? It's really simple, actually. But, which is why, when I was listening to the show today, I was thinking that, it's great that that everybody has their thing within the EU, but bridges do have to kind of come together. A lot of people ask the obvious questions, to Ken Wheeler, for example, on Theoria Apophis' channel. People know who he is, obviously, and people know who, I was going to say Creflo Dollar, but that's not the same guy. His name, Eric P. Dollard, sorry. So Eric P. Dollard, in no way to disrespect the guy's just an unbelievable person. So Eric Dollard, Theoria Apophis, Thunderbolts, there's a handful of channels that actually talk about this, and everybody in the comments sort of knows that this is happening, but the people who run these channels don't really want to acknowledge each other. And so I'll give you a little bit of insight because I'm obsessed with reading comments and on other people's channels. I don't even watch the videos sometimes. I'll just pause the content and just read the comments. And because for some reason I find understanding the pulse of psychology right now and how people interpret and who's real and who's not. You know, it's so funny to really consider what that means. So reading comments about how people ask under the Thunderbolts projects, under the Thunderbolts Project news things, they're like, have you talked to Ken Wheeler? Have you gone on Joe Rogan? Have you talked to Veritasium? And these people never get an answer, and we will never get an answer, is really what's going on. So ultimately, I encourage everybody to do their own work, because really, if you want to get stuff done, you just have to add and also replace crappy content. That was a long way around. But the Tattooed Monkey, he's pretty genius. I gotta say, he, like, with everything that people say about him, and of course I don't watch all the camera videos, but that's a perfect example of just accepting a person as they are, whether or not you agree with them, just to absorb information that they're willing to share with you. It's such a pure interaction on such an interesting platform. YouTube is like, you can really look at it as this real savior and equalizer for everybody to kind of share information. At the same time, you have 2-minute physics getting like 20 million views, and Thunderbolts Project like hovering around 9,000. And it's like, what? Why? It's so disinteresting. 2-minute physics is almost an assault. It's like these songs nowadays. It almost feels like media has become weaponized, and it was, and it always has been, but people, I guess the system has mastered this. And so getting on YouTube, getting on any social media platform is really like dodging bullets. And but really within all this suffering and pain and trolling, you know, there is some really amazing content that changes lives. You know, it really does change lives. And yeah, let's see what the chat room says. What's up, Miguel Gonzalez? Good to see you, bud. What was I gonna say? Yeah, Duplicate True says, I love the EU community, but I definitely don't agree with all the contributors. I went back and looked at, like, I think I'm almost at the, 90% watched of all the old videos. The ones that have like 10,000 views, and there are some interesting talks, stuff that I hadn't really heard and that they don't repeat later on. Like Wall was a bit more, I don't know, emphatic, I guess. And I understand like trying to grow this channel on YouTube and kind of maintain just your position throughout all this bullshit as Wall Thornhill. I can't even imagine what that guy's lived through and had to deal with. But yeah, it would be great if the whole production team got live every night. It would basically change the world, I think. At least a little bit. That type of interaction, get like Eugene Bagachov on, get a debate going. I mean, that's why I love the Electric View stuff, because that's basically it. But yeah, I mean, actually I just answered my question, but more of that. Way more of that type of interaction is great. And I love when I answer my own questions. I'm feeling really silly, y'all. I think it's just all the chemtrails getting to me today. Let's throw on some tunage, and I wish we could do some zooms, but I'm happy to have the moon setting 30%-ish illuminated tonight. Very easy to see through the clouds even that Mare Crisium definitely has hexagonal lattice features, which I almost, like I said, I hadn't really noticed exactly, but this is a particularly good phase and day to see it. And then this is, that's Mare Fecunditatis, that is Mare, damn, it's not Humorum. It might be Mare Humorum, but now it's gone. But to the left of Mare Tranquillitatis, I'm gonna double check that with my atlas. Mare nectaris. So Mare nectaris almost looking like a square, like a diamond, or call it like a trapezoid. I guess they have I use that because they have this cluster in M42 Nebula, which is called trapezium, and that really looks like a trapezoid, so I feel like it's kind of an appropriate and cool name for those things. So Shockwave says, the tattooed monkey is okay, but he bases his stuff on math, and it's mostly incorrect. Yeah, okay. Math is a god to these people, and it's really only a tool. I'm like, so my opinion on that is that math and synthetic, this whole artificial intelligence stuff, while, seemingly scary and maybe really not good for the future insofar as survival of mankind as we know it, I feel like, I don't know, I think that math, I don't want to discard it entirely, simply because you have to transition through kind of the phase of not relying so heavily on math. But I think relating plasma cosmology to people through math will win over a lot of people who can lead a physics revolution. I know that sounds maybe idealistic, but I think that you need people to enjoy the math side of it. There is a lot of math to go around, like Pierre-Marie Robitaille, and I mean, I would love to see somebody carry on Stephen Crother's work, or helping him, or making videos with him, talking to people who challenge him, and really, can you imagine, like, why are there no debates with Stephen Crothers and like a whole bunch of scientists, or Joe Rogan, or any of these people? But I will say that I have noticed the little cracks, because I've watched YouTube for so long, but there are cracks in certain shows. Like I gave an example a couple of weeks ago about Tony Darnell in Deep Space videos. He was lamenting space junk, and he was really lamenting space junk. He was like, well, maybe we shouldn't have that many satellites. And I was like, damn, even Tony Darnell, I think that's his name, on Deep Space videos, Deep Sky videos, or no, what is it, Deep Astronomy, that's what it is, sorry. And I just check in from time to time on channels like that who just can't break paradigm, just to see how they're talking about science and if there are cracks, because I enjoy it. And so Tony Darnell was talking about space junk, and who else? I think some of the, damn, I went off course, but I feel like it'll eventually start showing where people are like, damn, like, why haven't we been back to the moon? Or, yeah, actually, here's an example. I'm doing, just asking people what they think about the moon missions. And so whatever you think about it, whether it's real or not, or if people are crazy who think about this question, set that all aside for a second. Just the fact that it's such a divisive story and incident is interesting in and of itself. So for me, like this kind of focus on the moon and understanding where we are in the moon race and how the moon affects Earth, and learning about lunar geology and how the moon was formed and the history of Earth. I could go down a list, but this is the kind of stuff that I've been trying to show and stay consistent with, because a record of lunar history is something that's either being done in private or not being done at all. And that's sort of why I started originally, to kind of do partly that, is archive and log, like our ancestors did. And I know that that's also definitely ego-driven to degrees, but I feel like uncoupling it from money and uncoupling it from rules of not discussing things versus discussing things. Anyway, man, I've been talking a lot tonight. I thought I was just going to play some tunes, but it's going on an hour and a half. Yeah, let's see. So I don't want to throw out math immediately, but I agree that it's way too heavily reliant on math and simulations and not actual observational science, 100%. easy thing to tell people, easy thing to talk about. Do you know anybody in science? Do you know anybody in science? If you do, just ask them whether they've looked through a telescope. If people are talking about space and they haven't looked through a telescope in a year, then really, you got to wonder what they're really doing in science. And I know that, like, obviously it sounds like I'm being like, man, if you haven't had a scope, then you know nothing. But I honestly think if you're doing astrophysics or cosmology or anything like that, and you're not actively looking at the sky and recording events and talking to people about those events, then you're not really doing astronomy, right? I don't know. And now I'm sort of throwing shade. Duplicat says, I'm not a Suspicious Observer subscriber, but he made a 1-hour video called Plasma Cosmology that came out a few days ago. It's pretty good. I talked about Ben a bunch of times on the channel, so like I was a super big, like Ben was the bridge from ufology to Electric Universe for me. So right around the fall of Gaia and David Wilcock and No Disclosure, I was like, what the F is going on? And I found Suspicious Observers around, I want to say 2011, maybe 2011, 2010 maybe even. And I was showing it to all my friends. I was like, eyes open, no fear. Thought it was super cool. And I love that kind of, I still believe that the system was salvageable. I thought maybe the world will end and we'll just all be relieved of suffering. And so I was a little bit into the Doomsday 2012 theory. And I found Suspicious Observers, and he was hanging out with Billy Yelverton apparently back in 2011, 2012, and I didn't even understand. I didn't make that connection back then. It took me all the way back around to 2015 where I saw Thunderbolts Project and saw Suspicious Observers, and I was like, oh damn, that's that channel I used to be super into. And the reason I stopped watching Suspicious Observers every day was because he has a particular cadence to the way he presents, and it is anxiety-inducing for me particularly. And no matter how many times I try and watch it, it's always the same. It's like the way he presents, and it's not any disrespect to him. So, but once in a while I will check out his content, and honestly, he's built like a huge channel with great graphics and a really clear message. So I never kind of disrespect Suspicious Observers, even though like I can't watch all the content so much, but he's really right on point with all of it. Although I question things that people don't want to question, like I leave it open for Apollo to be real, but I certainly question the whole kind of event as a really defining moment in mankind that is just glossed over. It's kind of yada yada as like, yeah, it definitely happened. It was Russian posturing, blah, blah, blah. We did it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, really, how is this not like a national holiday? How is this not talked about pretty much daily? It's such an astounding, miraculous level achievement that's treated like, oh, yeah, just a little thing we did for the war. You know, America does shit for the war, so we went to the moon a bunch of times, came back, and then now we can't do it at all. And that's really strange. Like, I don't know, like how old do you have to get till you just let out a sigh of relief and say, these guys are not going anywhere? Or they're going all the time and not telling us. So I'm all about like alternate theories. So I don't think like, oh, they faked the moon mission, therefore they suck. I just feel like there's something more to be learned about with the moon. Like, what's going on? Like, can we go there? Like, are all the missions delayed for a reason? Like, I don't know. I have a lot of good questions about it. And a big part of it is, thank you, Crystal, says something very nice, says, that was well said, thank you, says, observation has almost become obsolete, love your channel, Purple Heart back to you, and I really wanted to do that. I mean, I really wanted to put like real damn footage. It almost, the reason I don't even make graphics that are Electric Universe related, I kind of have been doing a few thumbnails, to be honest, because I'm like, the hell with it. But I tried to really be very consistent with like, no, this is an actual shot. of an actual planet or an actual star. There's, you know, because it's so particularly terrible in popular science. You go through hour-long videos or 7-minute videos or 2-minute science, and there's almost zero actual footage of space. It's crazy. I mean, that's just super crazy. And people don't even blink. They're like, oh yeah, what do you mean? I'm like, man, like they're talking about space in not deep detail, in some terrible surface level, pedantic, patronizing way. But then they have no actual footage of space. I doubt that any of those bloggers have seen the moon or Saturn through a scope, and yet they release these articles and people just read them, and it's very hard to critically think. So there was a point that I wanted to make about that, which was, I think it's great that like a lot of people are approaching, you know, proto-Saturnian cosmology and the Purple Dawn and all that type of work. And, you know, like Jacob Gale is doing vacuum experiments and traveling around and like showing geological structures. You have Sky Scholar. Honestly, people don't talk enough about Pierre-Marie Robitaille, but he's just so on point, and his stuff is so complicated, and like real ways to kind of, you know, to talk about the sun, for example. So, like, I don't understand why there aren't videos with Donald Scott and Pierre-Marie Robitaille and, let's say, Michael Goodspeed, I guess that's his name, and I don't know, maybe Eugene Bagachov moderating, talking about the electric sun. You know, that would be a show. Like, and I'm not trying to like say that anybody's show is even this show is just me talking and talking to y'all, but kind of the guys who really sort of have defined this, I don't know. I kind of feel like if I talk about it enough, ultimately they'll start having live streams or get on there. I actually loved, like, I was so surprised with Electric View that when Eugene was on, I was like, holy shit, like, or who, I think you had Andy Hall on as well, and that was really awesome. He's great. So I'm gonna play some music. I know I've been talking a lot. What's up, 921 Virgo? Who wiped off the Mars rover? Question everything, exactly. Duplicate says, I feel he's fear-mongering to promote his brand. Like, I think, like, if you really asked him, I mean, I'm completely assuming here, and if Ben ever listens to this, I'm totally just speculating. I hope I'm not disrespecting, but it's possible that he's like, man, the hell with it. YouTube is just like that landscape. I want to get my channel out there, and that's how people lap up this information. At the same time, I'm going to tell them about Electric Universe, right? I kind of read it that way, but to be perfectly honest, like, I love the content, but it's definitely anxiety-inducing. And in a way, like, yeah, that's my take on it. But all respect to Ben. Honestly, man, like, he was really on top of Billy Elverton's stuff, like, years ago, like, way before anybody was doing it. And he kind of got him thinking, and it wasn't just that, it was Michael Steinbecker as well. Yeah, those guys are fucking amazing. It's just, I feel like lucky to be able to be part of something that actually has some sort of merit. So thanks everybody for the cool chat. Let's take a little break. I'm gonna try and get a refill on my drink, and I think the moon is done for tonight, so I'm gonna try and head over to Jupiter for the closeout. All right.
Celestron is rescued par votre lumière. Le fixing the phone, mixing your liquids, now you're left for dead. Just pay your debts.
Yo, Duplicate asked me a question that I was thinking about today. So I got Saturn in view, took out the focal reducer, so this is the Sony a6 V directly to the 8-inch, and we got a double zoom on the camera. I feel like Saturn is kind of moving away from us at this point, so it's a bit smaller than normal, but it's not too bad, and the tracking is all right. So Duplicate says, how many Jupiter's moons did I catch last night? I think you mean Saturn, actually, because usually Jupiter is just, the 4. But there were stars around it, yeah, for sure. Whoa. I forgot that I had my setting high. My setting is always high. All right, here we go. Yo, Shockwave, awesome chat. Thank you. Love is electric. It certainly is. I was thinking, though, like sometimes I think about this whole idea of eradicating evil or peace, world peace. Speaking of the title of this video, Electric World. But, it feels like it's spinning sometimes, and they referenced on the show today, it was great. It was like, that really it seems very fractured, and it's like a total mess. But it also is a very important time where we can grow and reconnect. And so maybe not everybody is going to have the same sort of destiny in this new reality. Or maybe not everybody's going to have that same path. So potentially this is the way the system grows into new, smaller systems. It also could be the way a system explodes. So we don't know for sure, but it's interesting to think that potentially there is this kind of cosmic evolution that happens where, our sun or planets nearby kind of give off electrical discharge and modify DNA and change evolution and humankind. That's just an amazing idea. It's definitely something that's supported by the evidence. It's just not talked about in a realistic way. But how cool. It might ultimately mean the demise of current man, but it's suffice to say that life will exist in a different type of paradigm. And I think that's probably enough, At least enough for me today. So I'm going to hang out here for a little bit, then we'll check out Jupiter. But to Duplicate was talking about how many moons, and so let's check them out tonight. But I was thinking, like, how weird it is that we saw Eyepieces on Saturn, which is a rare find. Oh damn, Stellarium just crashed on me. It's doing this weird thing where if I'm running, I should probably try and switch up softwares at some point. All right, so what do we got around Saturn tonight? I was all ready to take a break, but now we got Saturn, so the configurations should look pretty right, like a little bit like last night. So let me set these settings. Let me set. Yeah. What's Shocker saying? I get this certain feeling when I see the planet God. I know. You gotta just like, it's such a mind-boggling experience to view Saturn. And, some nights it really kind of comes across, but if you ever have a chance to really see Saturn with an optical piece, I definitely recommend that, because you kind of see the context. So I'm gonna try and get that context right here. Let's do it. Eyepieces. Lapit, IP address. It's an IP address. it's a Tedlapetus. It's a Tempur-Pedic. Tempur-Pedic moon. Right, so it's a bit hazy, but the setup is still there. Titan at the 7 o'clock. Duplicate says the Aether. I love that. The Aether must have been really stable last night. That's right, you heard it here first. We're definitely not throwing out the Aether. Not tonight. Not for a while. What up? Eat all your fish. Eat all your Aether. Eat Aether. Just playing all the word games tonight. You know, you gotta work through the bad jokes to get to the good ones. But I'm just working through Stellarium here to get us the moons. All right, Titan, like I said, bottom left corner. And then Eyepieces, top left, kind of the 10 o'clock. And then right above Saturn, you got Tethys, kind of on the edge. Then the 2 o'clock is Rhea at the top, and then Dione underneath it. And then underneath that, see, I don't think we're seeing Mimas. So I feel like it's a star, but for some reason, and Hyperion is, see, Hyperion is in that far position to the right, but I don't think we're seeing Hyperion because I just don't think you can see it. Its magnitude is just not, especially right now, but that's the one far, far right to the 3 o'clock position. But still looking really dope. We got our, what is very likely, or what is very possible to be the old Earthian sun, our old birth mother, or father, our father. The Aether must have been really stable. I love that. I don't know how Aether was traded for dark matter, but let's just toss out dark matter. Gravitational waves. Ooh, spooky language. Honestly, George Carlin echoes through the halls. It's like, that's how you get people to believe. You use spooky language. Cosmic, spooky, entanglement, dark matter. Event horizon really just completely detaches people. And it's intentional. It's gotta be. Just like this political race is gonna be intentionally spoiled to continue the facade. But we still ride into space and get this amazing view for ourselves for now, while there is still a grid of some sort. Shockwave says, everything thinks there's an energy in the ether we can tap into. I say no, it's misunderstood. Energy that is Birkin currents, that energy flows all around us and the sun supplies us every second. Shockwave, yeah, I don't know who was saying it. Was it John Cook, or maybe it was Eric Dollard actually said, like, you know, maybe 100 years ago or 200 years ago with less people on Earth, like the idea of free energy seemed like more of a feasible thing, but this idea of actually extracting energy from the ether is actually probably dangerous for the system. So that's an interesting way of looking at it that I hadn't thought of. But further than that, I agree. I think it's a little bit misunderstood, the whole idea of free energy devices and perpetual motion machines. Although, like, there's this idea of modalities and figuring out how to like tune things and frequency and figuring out like resonance, and maybe that is as easy as just hidden knowledge that has been absconded with and we just don't have access to. Yo, what up, Fresh? What our birth sun? Do you mean what we're looking at? We're looking at Saturn. What is our birth sun? So there's just an idea that's put forth by Emanuel Velikovsky in the context of a plasma universe where Earth was possibly inside the brown dwarf Saturn's plasma sheath along with Mars. It's just a theory. But it's a very interesting story that changes the timeline of our universe, and it's something that I think is really just more interesting than the current paradigm that we live under. This kind of just, like I was saying, spooky language, simulation-driven, math-driven, it's just overload on math. Like I said earlier, I don't want to toss out math. Math is an art, it's beautiful, but it just because you can make an equation happen doesn't mean it happens in reality. And we do have a current public science sector that works and operates under completely theoretical concepts, and then builds more theoretical concepts on top of those theories that haven't been proven fully. But then further, because people want to present new information, and the media is basically complicit with trickle-down technology, they basically they hold back the growth of science. I've said it on my channel a bunch of times, but go back and look at all the people who are talking about conspiracy theories, to different types of science, to you name it, from Michio Kaku to Neil deGrasse Tyson to Joe Rogan to Vsauce to vintage space to deep astronomy. All of these people, not a single one talks about Emmanuel Velikovsky. Not a single one talks about Halton Arp. Not for a split, not even a second. They don't mention these people. It's just or like, you know what I mean? And this idea, this deification of Sagan is like a whole other thing that I wish there was a whole documentary about how Sagan single-handedly, that's not really fair. I'm sure there were other people like, you know, Edwin Hubble and Fred Hoyle, and there were a lot of different forces pulling people left and right. But besides like looting and all the information, you had people like Sagan convincing people to not look deeper into Velikovsky and not look deeper into alternative theories, even though he actively knew that those theories were in question. So Sagan has these like, just this weird deification of this man because he was very poetic, but Fresh says, I live under God because God gives me a reason to love, not the idea of a Big Bang where people are of no value. So that's an interesting take, because similarly, plasma cosmology and the electric universe returns to a spiritually integrated science. So it's obvious that people are spiritual at every level. There are different types of spirituality, and everybody has some sort of that, even people who are atheists. You know, even I thought I was atheist for a long time. Ultimately, we don't really know at this juncture. But if you feel like you know and that's what works for you, then great. But the point is, I agree that the Big Bang and current day cosmology makes us feel orphaned, thrown away, discarded, insignificant, unable to comprehend. It's basically the trademark of a bully, of what a bully tells you in high school. It's like, you suck and you can't do, and everything is over your head, and if you question things, you're an idiot, and even the way you question things makes you an idiot. Like, that's what I was talking about last night, actually, is like, if we just tried to cooperate, treat people like we want to be treated, and then talk about science, I think critical thinking can come back. And that would be a return to holistic science, where people can be spiritual and also talk about math and also talk about science and get along, as opposed to always be ready to fight. Isn't that what it's about, right? Like, if you want peace, you have to figure out how to get there. You can't just say, like, I want peace. But if you want peace, then you have to start by working like on interaction. Duplicate says, I used to be sub to all those science channels years ago. EU changes everything. Got to pick your path. It's true, like all those channels really just don't say a single word, not even to decry, excuse me, not even to denounce or fight. You would think like this is my whole beef with like these people who pop out of nowhere, like Jordan Peterson and how like people deify Joe Rogan. I'm just gonna say it, like I know a lot of people love his show, but look at the reach he has, and if he really had like the EU on for a week, he could change the world, but he doesn't. Neil deGrasse, you think that guy doesn't see YouTube channels? Of course he does. You don't think David Wilcock has seen Thunderbolt's project? I bet he has. You know, I know that they're finally on Gaia, but you know, I have mixed feelings about all those kind of aggregate video channels. Also, check out this Saturn configuration, which is freaking unreal right now. As I'm talking, it's getting clearer, and we got this crazy cool, like, almost like what is the engine in Back to the Future? A flux capacitor with Saturn at the center of the triangle, and then Titan glowing very brightly, and then a bunch of stars in Sagittarius doing a recursive triangulation. Eat all your fish says, what if the Big Bang, quote, quote, was just God busting a nut? Think about it. Okay, I'm gonna stop thinking about it now. Because who knows, man? What is the Big Bang anyway? It's again, it's that spooky, like circus language. Big Bang, step up and see the Big Bang. Really, that's how you can tell, man. It's just that language. It just kind of feels wrong. Big Bang, fake news. Same for dark matter. Like dark matter, again, is a very, very cool phrase to say dark matter. Ooh, does it matter? Dark matter. Darkest matter ever. It's so spooky and dark that you'll never understand it. The spookiest spooky entanglement of quantum silliness and fuzziness. Like you listen to the Elegant Universe stuff, there's nothing elegant about it. It's like the most confused piece of shit. Excuse me. It's the most confused drivel imaginable, but like when you're 20 years old and you watch What the Bleep Do We Know, you're like, oh, multi-dimensions, like split timelines where the world doesn't suck. Basically, that's the big sell, right? People are like, this world sucks, so I hope there's a parallel reality that doesn't suck. And one day people will find it. I think that's one of the key reasons people love the Big Bang and all this bullshit with quantum mechanics, because it's like we fucked up here. It's the whole Rick and Morty thing. It's like we fucked up this Earth, Morty. Let's find another one. You know, as opposed to being like, even if we're fucking it up, it should just be like really, we should enjoy it. Like, look at this cool view, man. Like, what the hell? Like how many millions of people are watching like reality TV right now, and we're watching reality TV. Oh man, it's so stupid, but it's true. Like, look at this shit. Like, I can't get away from it. It's incredible. Nobody can get away from it. Anyway, you watch that reality TV, but Saturn is still above you, still waiting to be discovered. It's like this giant adventure game that everybody can be part of. And people are just, they look at you all squinty-eyed. They're like, what? Why? But the few people that I have introduced it to that took on, like really did get that whole empowerment thing. And then you can really, again, like I tell people, like, don't believe everything you see online, of course, but especially Thunderbolt's project, like check all the stuff that they talk about. Don't just watch it and be like, oh, this person's telling me to watch Thunderbolt's project and everything they say must be right. Not at all. I would say like jump back to 2015 EU conference and just listen to some of the talks and just see that it's a bunch of smart people like you and me, trying to decipher bigger concepts in different ways. And it should be as accepted as those stupid, like, sorry, I'm a little bit flip tonight, but I don't know. I look online constantly to check the pulse of the pop sci, and they're a blithering zombie. Honestly, these talks about dark matter and quantum mechanics and building hadron colliders and I'm guilty of it. Like, I used to love the Hadron Collider talk, but man, like, if you can't engage people and we can't even come together on a moon mission, then like, what are we doing? So I was at a party and I got, let me see, I asked about 10 people if they thought the moon mashed potatoes, the moon and the moon missions were real. And so I got a lot of hemming and hawing. There's a lot of hemming and hawing, but I got, what was it? I want to say 6 people out of 10 said, no freaking way, don't believe it happened. But then their qualifier was that, like, it's possible. I definitely think they can do it. But I'm like, do you think that Apollo 11 happened in July of 69? Just that one event. And it was a 6 out of 10. And I think that that's just enough of a ratio on a very intellectual group of people that is like, it warrants a question of like, why are we so divided on this one particular event? Obviously, many other events and, you know, not to mention violent events, but this is a positive event. And people are kind of split in real life. And I feel like contributing a little bit to the politeness of the discussion about the moon and space is really important. And hell yeah, Wild Vicky, I'll toast to you. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, just contribute a little bit in your life to helping people talk about science in a more polite and understanding, cooperative way. And then I think being able to use critical thinking and electric universe and other things like that to actually interpret data as it comes at you. So I think it's very easy for people to be like, oh, I went on this channel and that person told me how to think. But really what Electric Universe does is it kind of gives you tools to interpret new data. That's what's cool about it. And that's what's really different about our current state of pop sci. And that's not to say that there aren't like amazing physics channels, like guys, like laboratory stuff that isn't incredible. There are a ton of channels like that where guys do lab experiments and they really know what they're doing. And I can't hate on that. But it's more about the theoretical pop sci. Eat All Your Fish says it's a joke. Right there with you. So much damn BS to sort through to find one actual fact. Very annoying. Here, I'll give you one topic that y'all can check for yourselves. Look into like what is vanishing point, optics, how does the eye work? And you'd think like, oh, I'm gonna find a dozen videos on this, and you'll find like at least 10 videos that are just these really poorly produced, extremely old, cartoon level videos. It's the same thing with meteoric impact. It's the same thing with just a lot of different topics that you think, oh, this should already be solved and figured out. Like rain, like how is rain formed? Like what are air currents? And like besides, you know, differences in pressure and your typical geological explanation, like what is it? Like why do things operate this way? And you really can't find any real, actual, calm discussion about these topics. Case in point, for me, lunar craters, besides like the stuff that you can dig up from Ralph Jurgens and Electric Universe, NASA stuff almost does not talk with any type of detail about lunar crater formation. It doesn't have like any single video of laboratory ballistics with a large object impacting lunar. They have basically exact lunar soil replica. Why not create a perfect crater selection and have it on a website? Like, that's so crazy that that doesn't exist, but it doesn't. So, self-reliance. Fresh says, at Shockwave, you say, flat earth bro, that's a Phoenician lie based on greed. Wrong, flat earth is based on facts, mate. That's all that's needed. I'm going to just talk about my opinion on flat Earth, just since we're talking about stuff. The Earth definitely, to me, does not seem to operate in the way that the flat Earth concept proposes that it does, even though it's very easy to misinterpret that information in that way. And the real case in point, the two examples that I point to, is that magnetism, if you believe that magnetism exists, this creates spheres as a simple form. It clumps together. And then two, you also have growth, and growth grows outwards in spheres and pods and hexagons and cubes, and these are three-dimensional objects. So the idea of flatness and the concept of flatness is really limiting, one. And then two, you have the moon, Saturn, Jupiter, that all operate and look like spherical objects. And then third, the last one is Dwayne Kellum has done perfect examples of extremely high-level balloon flights that show the curve for the people that really want the curve. So it's an unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in, where everybody's on different sides of this, because there are a lot of people who are interested in flat Earth. And I know that it's very touchy, because people who get into it feel like they're very fulfilled and that they're excited by it and that they've discovered something, and people who despise it are basically extremely aggressive about that. And then being in the middle doesn't really exist. Like right now, I talk about it in a way that is like basically shooting myself in the foot, because people are so triggered by flat Earth at this point that it could destroy a channel. But I don't really care, because it's something that exists in the context of this world. But unfortunately, it does detract from true scientific discovery, because people are mostly talking again and relying on systems that they hate, so to speak, to prove things that really won't take us anywhere. So what if it's flat? That's why I always say, like, so what if people admitted, the government, tomorrow, that the world was flat? Like, would that change that you'd had to get up and eat and piss and like have sex and shit like that? Like, no, it wouldn't. It's the same thing with the shape of the Earth or the shape of the moon. Like, what's cool is like actively pursuing something passionately and relating to people and being kind to people and sharing. So flat Earth seems to me divisive. Again, like the Apollo missions, like NASA, it's very divisive. Electric Universe, if you read the comments, you listen to the people on the channel, they're very chill. They don't sound divisive. Some of them you might not agree with fundamentally, but nobody's bullying on that channel. And that's what's different about it, and everybody recognizes that who follows that channel. It's very obvious. So I hope that I haven't offended flat earthers, because I know that that's like a real thing that people believe in. But I want to unequivocally say I don't think that the Earth is flat. In fact, it really seems fine that it's spherical, and then I want to think about the world from there, because there's no point in arguing about the shape of it, because what's to do after that? So right now, looking at Saturn, that's crazy, because I've never seen that before. Or looking at Jupiter or the moon up close, I've never seen that before. That's new. Flat Earth is like actually pretty limiting and divisive. So that's all I'm going to say about it. That's the most I've said about it probably in 5 years, but that's truly it. And I don't mean to disrespect anybody, but we should talk about things, or like we should talk about observational science, critical thinking, and politeness over the shape of the Earth, honestly. Okay. But people can do anything they want. Of course, I'm not trying to tell anyone not to think the way they do. I'm just offering a small group of people an opportunity to enjoy real views of space, cool music, and a cool atmosphere. Like I said, I want to keep it really simple, and I don't want to like trigger anybody, you know? Yeah, that's interesting, Duplicate. Because I've definitely wanted to talk about it, and you just reminded me. So let me just have a quick puff and tell you what I think about the exoplanet thing. Like, it's a little bit like the spooky language or like the propaganda language, exoplanet research. We found a slew of new exoplanets. It definitely reeks of branding and marketing. And for a lot of years I was like, well, it would be cool to find that. Like, that's a really interesting method that they use to discover exoplanets. People are excited by it. So at the beginning I was very excited. And then over the years I was like, well, it feels like you're completely using up all these big telescopes to do exoplanet research. And that means you can't use the telescopes to do like, galaxy imaging. And so it kind of ties into what I've talked about with like large telescopes keeping all their data private. And maybe they have good reason to do that. Like, that's not my purvey, right? But it's not for us. So I feel like exoplanet research now is a little bit like the Hadron Collider, where you can keep getting smaller and smaller particles, and you can keep finding more and more exoplanets forever. And so you can never, it's basically the eternal funding project, right? Like the gravitational waves, like these things will never further science, right? They're only there to prove theories. Like, I don't think that they don't find things. I'm sure that they find things and people involved are not all in on it, so to speak. But the truth is, like, when you really look at the big shift for me was when you get a telescope and you get camera data and you start thinking, you're like, oh, when they tell me they got data from space, what do they mean? And then when you realize it's like charts and graphs and spectrum and photos, then you get a sense of like what's happening. So once you see that, you're like, okay, how are they interpreting this? And then you look, you're like, they're matching a photo to a chart. They're matching like a spectrum analysis to another spectrum analysis, and then they make a judgment. So these things are not set in stone, but then the media portrays them as if they were like completely not, you can't debate them, they're done, that's it. If he got funding or peer reviewed, that means that's it, it's real. And this is hugely detrimental to science. This is why science is like in a really shitty space. It's like, it happens a lot under Thunderbolts Project videos where it's like, are these peer reviewed? Like, who gives a shit? Who do you know on the peer board? Like, that would make them more valid than somebody like Stephen Crothers, who sounds like he freaking knows what he's talking about. And he's also like, he's out there actually doing new things, like uncovering and realizing and understanding things, as opposed to defending like the apologists, which I think I've coined. Like, I'm gonna take that little pat because I don't think I've seen it online, but the apologists are almost like a spectrum of people that have to like deify antiquated events or antiquated people for some reason. It's like some reason, like people think, oh my God, Stephen Hawking, he said it, therefore. Or Einstein, he said it, therefore. I'm like, you really want to live your life following these, these literally rotting in the ground right now? This guy, that's your leader, not yourself, or not somebody new who's giving you new ideas. Like, can you imagine somebody like, like David Talbot, in a presidential debate? Are you kidding? Like, that's the type of different person. Like, these presidential debates are just obnoxious and offensive at every level. Am I ranting? Yes, definitely. What's happened in the chat? Earth is a banana. Yes, I always think about it. It could easily be a torus, or it could be a hypertrochoid, an hourglass shape. The Earth could be a cube, but to think that it's like really a pancake flat with the like caves and stalactites at the bottom, with like water being held in. Like, once you really set that in stone and you kind of really think about it, but then you just have to, you basically, yeah, I'm not going to go back into it, but really the high altitude balloons are kind of it. And man, Dwayne Kellum, like, hell yeah, I think he's going to put out this whole thing where he gives his opinion finally on whether the Earth is flat or not, which is funny. But I think like he's already done the work that is just unreal. It's perfect. There's no distortion on the lenses, and you can see what it looks like at 150K feet. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Shockwave says the EU will be coming out with a new model of atomic structure soon. You know, like I have my own personal ideas about that, because if you think about like the idea of the core and then empty space and then a shell and then overlapping like onion skin shells of magnetic ether plasma, information stored outside the body. You guys talked about a lot of there are a lot of topics on Electric View today that I thought were like, hell yeah, I'm all about that. Eileen McCusick talks about the human biofield. It's very obvious that like information is carried outside the body in magnetic shells, and the brain and the senses pick up on all our we literally carry every single memory that's ever occurred, every event at all times in a magnetic resonance bubble. And that's probably why we have these interacting spheres, and that's why spherosity is really, that's why I believe in things being spherical, is because it seems like around us, 360 degrees, there's a bubble. Fresh says, have I seen Capricorn 1 about the Mars? Yeah, I did. I mean, look, that triggered a lot of people because they're like, oh, that's bullshit because they did that in the studio, but it really is exactly how something like that would happen. And yeah, I mean, that movie is unbelievable. The fact that it exists and the fact that the people who are in it talk about it. Have you seen the one with I think probably you have, with the one where the actors give their opinions on it. Because people are divided. People are not sure if other men walked on the moon. Like, that sucks. You know, I don't want to be like one of those people that like, I've always said this, I don't want to be like, ha ha ha, NASA, you suck. You didn't get anybody to the moon. Like, it would be really depressing. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of want it to be real, and I think it probably in some ways is, but like it definitely has this aura to it that sucks, that we can't find out if it really happened, and I don't know if we'll ever go back. Like, been 20 years for me where the government keeps saying like, hey, we're going to the moon, hey, it's canceled, hey, we're going to the moon, but it's canceled. Like, people are like, oh, but you don't understand. They always tell me, they're like, Chris, blah, blah, blah. But we're going back. Didn't you see the Artemis mission? And I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Do you forget, like, every single time that we have plans to go back, it gets canceled? And no one seems to really care, which is why that happens. So anyway, we'll see this Chandrayaan mission. I haven't checked on it this week. I've been busy, but I'm going to check on that. And we'll see if the Indian Chandrayaan 2 mission actually sends back some footage. Stephen Hawking definitely could have been just like a plastic model, like just a mannequin with like one of those animatronic. Absolutely, Stephen Hawking was totally animatronic. Controlled by Dick Cheney, hanging out with probably Winston Churchill's head in a jar. Right. Maybe Margaret Thatcher's head in a jar. How come lots of stars, Fresh says, how come lots of stars look like they are in water? What are my thoughts? It's hard to gauge like the level of sonoluminescence in space. Like, people really think that space is water due to like what Crow said and other people. But like, I don't think it's water like we know water on Earth. But I could be wrong, right? Like, there are a lot of stories about that. So maybe I'm wrong, and maybe planets and moons are sonoluminescence, but it still means they're real. Right? So there's a lot of this whole crossover on flat Earth where it's like, stars are wandering luminaries, they're light bulbs, they're sonoluminescence, which implying that they're not real, so to speak. But like, if you really slow down and reinterpret that phrasing, you'll see that, like, of course they're real. Even if they're sonoluminescent and holographic, they're still real. So see, there's this kind of dissonance with that science. But my channel here is to show that, like, Saturn that we're looking at right now, even if it's a hologram, it's still pretty amazing. like Nibiru, right? Like, this whole idea of looking at space through this filter of like needing a second sun or needing like a missing planet or needing missing dark matter. There's always this thing that you need more. Oh, they're not showing us because there's more. But like, it's really more about like looking at Saturn and being like, hell yeah, Saturn's freaking awesome. Like I can appreciate what I've got, right? Like that's the philosophical lesson. It's not about like being like, I see Saturn, but they're hiding the hexagon. Oh, I see the hexagon, but they're hiding the Nazis. Oh, I see the Nazis, but I don't, I just realized how funny that is. I see the not-sees. I see the Nazis, but I don't see the whatever UFOs. Oh, I see the UFO. You can keep going down that rabbit hole of like conspiracy lore, but you're still not appreciating that we are alive in a time where we can see the planet Saturn with a telescope and see it on YouTube. You know, it's like dialing it back and understanding that you're in the moment. Anyway, I'm talking a lot, I'm talking fast, and I'm gonna check out Jupiter, and then we're gonna roll out of here. Slow down. Slow down. Do we live in plasma? I think maybe that's what it is, right? Plasma. Final thought here, or one of my final thoughts is Tattooed Monkey, Theoria Apophysis, Ken Wheeler says modalities, right? Or like phases. So if water is ice and vapor and water and probably other different modalities, that probably plasma or the dielectric ether or dark matter is similar to having those modalities. So the modality would be gravity, and then electromagnetism, and then like plasma discharge, quasars, galaxies, et cetera, et cetera. So these different modalities of plasma, and maybe humans even, are a modality of plasma, in my opinion, or at least from what I've interpreted. So I like that idea because it's recursive, the geometry is the same up and down, and everything is in shells, in spherical shells, like bubbles, right? Magnetic bubbles that store information, that live inside information. What people don't even realize is like you're bringing entire space, the entire sky, to one point on your eye. Really, that's how powerful people are. We're not insufferable and aliens hate humans because we're a cancer on Earth. No, we're completely integrated and part of the system. And I see the Nazis, exactly. So funny. There was another one that I was laughing at that people don't recognize that Thanos is the nose, right? And in Guardians of the Galaxy, there's a whole like living inside the head of a giant. Like Marvel movies either are intrinsically like or somewhere deep down. These writers are coming up with these ideas because the genetic code is imprinted with these catastrophes. I mean, that's a really interesting idea that I've never thought of, that I hadn't thought of till recently. Damn good hologram, exactly. That's what I actually said, that exact same thing. I used to say to flat Earth concept, it's like, if the moon is a hologram and everybody can see it, that's like incredible technology. That's like I'm almost like, bravo, like, good job. You tricked me. You tricked everybody. Like, you deserve to own the world, right? If you can make a moon hologram that good. So I definitely think the moon is real, but, you know, whether people walked on it or whether it's close or whether, like, it entangled with Mars, a lot of great ideas about the moon that we can talk about. All right. Fibonacci, the Fibonacci sequence. jump in on that question too, since I'm talking about flat Earth tonight. Yeah, like there's this whole thing about the moon being translucent. It's a shame that the moon has already set tonight, so I can't like look at the moon while I talk about this, but definitely, 100%, please check out older archived, like my best of and transits, and you can see for yourself like tons of examples of stars going behind the moon and not being able to see them. Tons of examples of dark side of the moon, so like the not lit side, the earth shine, and you can absolutely make sure for yourself that you can't see anything through the moon. 100%, not a single time, not even a mistaken glance. That being said, on certain Terminator nights, like when the Terminator is at halfway, there are certain craters and features that lean into the dark portion, the dark side. I don't know, they could be misinterpreted as stars, but they're definitely features on the moon that are glinting and that are a bit taller so you can see them on the dark side. 100%. There's just absolutely, like, I know I hear it everywhere that the moon is see-through, but it really, this is one thing that I proved with doing this work, is that there's a 500 videos of the moon, not a single time can you see through it. So I hope that answers your question, and I hope that other flat earthers who have that doubt will check my archive and make sure for themselves, and then come take a look and see that you cannot see through the moon. And if there was a time that you could, I would 100% show it and be incredibly impressed by being able to capture it. So there's no reason for me to hide it, and I haven't seen it in 500 different videos of the moon. So that's it. No see-through moon. A lot of other weird things for sure, like lunar wave, that's a real thing. Like a lot of people want to attribute that to like airplane trails or camera software or like any number of things, but it's such a particular event. Nobody talks about it, at least from the public sector. For me, I finally sort of believe that it could be that it's a double plasma layer event where the moon and the earth intersect their plasma sheaths at some point. It happens once a month, and that's an event that's recurring. That's an event that has two of something, but it has a double sheath, like, so basically a 1-2 kind of interaction, and that's indicative of the wave. The fact that it looks like a refresh rate on a monitor seems to be happenstance and not realistic, even though it seems cool that would be the case, that like the moon is being refreshed on our sky. That's a very romantic and conspiracy movie type of thing. And like I said, I'm talking about conspiracies, but it's just very snazzy. It's like a great story, but really it seems like there's this magnetic plasma shit going on everywhere, and it's much more likely that we're looking at stuff in the sky that looks like it's in water, and water really flows on currents, and currents are magnetic and electrical at the very core, and that's why space looks like water. It's fractal, it's recursive, it's patterns, it's geometry, it's stuff that we know, it's stuff that we look like. Our bodies look geometric and symmetrical. It's so recursive that makes more sense than... Crow has caught the wave several times, but not just Crow, like at least 5 other people caught it. I've caught it 3 times, and I caught a Jupiter wave. John McKeon in Ireland caught the Jupiter wave too, completely separately, a year before me. And at least 5 other lunar watchers have caught other lunar waves. All of them have the same telltale features. All of them are very fine lines. And yeah, but what it really is, who knows for sure. My idea is plasma. Other people think it's airplane trails, and still others think it's a camera effect. And some people think you're just imagining it, which is just the weirdest thing. I would love to see somebody from NASA just look at it and be like, oh, it's this. You guys have been missing it this whole time. It's just this really... Actually, I don't want anybody to just dismiss it offhand, but it would be nice to get some sort of realistic discussion about it going. Where is NASA Moonwave? Right. Well, you don't really see a lot of footage from NASA from Earth of the moon, which is what I was lamenting earlier. Kind of sucks that we have so many great large telescopes and yet so little actual footage from them. People think that it's just there's a ton of it out there, but they're considering like what you can do with a telescope. It's an amazing thing that we don't have that. So yeah, just taking a look at this incredible alignment of moons right here. Let's get a cool track on. Track on. I knew it was going to be a good stream tonight. I had a good feeling about it, and thankfully, sky cleared for us just enough. Shockwave says those waves are a magnetosphere. I gotta say, I agree with that. Right now, that's the leading theory for me. That it's like the moon basically passing through the Earth's magnetopause or magnetosphere, and it does like goes through the double layer, and it's just one layer after the next, and it actually looks like it's kind of bubbling and it almost does look like it's refreshing, but it's happening for real because of some optical refraction of the magnetic layer. It's actually a really cool idea that could be the case. Eat All Your Fish says, it's no theory, NASA's instruments tell us that it rang like a bell. So the ring like a bell and actually sending things to the moon is also so steeped in like really weird videos and interpretations. Like if you look up NASA bombs the moon or NASA crashes on the moon, there's so little footage and so little realistic like slow debate, discussion about these events that it's very strange. Like I don't know like what actually hit the moon or it's very strange is the point. I'm trying to think of the actual mission, but like besides the LRO, all the other missions to the moon seem like really cagey and you don't have a lot of data from them. And you'd think like the moon is a really easy thing. If we've had rovers on Mars for that long, then the moon would be a joke. There was an Apollo conspiracy thing that I just could mention just because I remembered it. But this whole idea about like, oh, check it, bro. There are retro-reflectors that they left and we bounce off these lasers and so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is Operation Moonbounce existed at least 10, 15 years before any of these missions. And you can bounce light off the moon whether or not you have retro-reflectors on the surface. So anyway, they're looking for 1 or 2 photons, so-called, that come back from the surface of the moon. The type of interpretation that takes is so ridiculous, and the people who talk about it so fervently as like proof of the fact that we went there really don't know anything about the details of those procedures. And I think if they did, they would actually question it more. But that's just a thought. Nice alignment, hell yeah. So I was gonna pull up the names of these. I think it's Ganymede, Callisto, Europa, and then Io is on the right, but let me just double check. Callisto, Ganymede, Io. No, it's Callisto, Ganymede, Europa, Io, yep. All right. But what I'm gonna try and do is maybe try and get a zoomed in shot of Jupiter. It looks pretty hazy. Just thinking to myself. Yeah, that's a pretty bad idea. Eat all your fish, detonating an atomic bomb. Also, how would you send it there? this idea that like every moon mission has to basically go around the Earth a bunch of times to create a gravity assist and expand its orbit each time to reach the lunar orbit. Like, how would you really send? Like, that's why I was wondering. Is like, how did they really bomb the moon? Like, and like, what is the level of difficulty of actually getting there? Speaking of which, I mentioned, I think in another show, but Elon Musk, that everybody deifies and thinks is just changing the world, like doesn't think that NASA can get man into low Earth orbit today. Like, how is that even possible? Mary, have a great night. Great to see you. Superstars and dreams, our cosmic seas. Anyway, it's more about like explosions in space and also like messing with the moon. You know, what if it is hollow and you like mess with the moon orbit? There are a lot of things to consider when it comes to going to the moon. Yeah, the orbiter crashed there in one of the southern like unlit craters. Oh, I think it was the L-Cross mission, right? And I just think that the footage from that is so suspect. And I think they may have tried it, or some other country has also tried to crash land one of the orbiters, but also the footage of that is also similarly low-tech, lo-fi. Fresh says, what are my thoughts on the moonlight being colder in the moon's shadow? What's tested this and myself couldn't believe it. I lost a lot of trust in the government space. Stick with people's space. The last part is cool. I did the light test on the moon. It's very hard to do that test without taking into a lot of other circumstances. So any derived theories or ideas from that moonlight test are just simply interpretations that like are up for debate as far as the way I saw it. I have one of those laser thermometers, and you really can't tell because you have induction and you have black body radiation, you have electrical field modalities that change temperature and pressure, you have where the moon is at its particular phase, so the moon isn't at the same place at any given time. The idea of a cold moon is just a concept, it's not a real thing. Even though it could be, but it's just more of a concept, that word, and it's very that sexy language, but it's not really like a cool idea. Like, oh, the cold moon, ooh, it's so snazzy. I really want to like cuddle up to that concept, but really, the moon sometimes heats, it sometimes cools, it sometimes doesn't do anything, it sometimes like pulls, and like depending on where it is in the sky, and in the phase, and the cycle, and probably in the longevity of years, it's doing different things. So what I try and get away from is like imposing these limits and these ideas that it's just like that, that's it, done for. That's what I was saying earlier about flat Earth. It's like, okay, it's done, it's flat, that's it. Then you're stuck. But if you say, okay, I'm open to all these things, let's figure it out, then you have way more room to grow. So that light moon thing that people were testing in the flat Earth community and interpreting as the moon being closer or smaller or whatever, it's interesting thinking. It's hard to like prove one way or another. Also, like, what is the proof actually give you? Like, so what if the moonlight is cold? What if it's hot? Who cares? Like, not who cares. That's really actually not the right way to talk about it. But like, how is that going to really help us? I think it's more interesting to like take those temperatures, but then see maybe like how moonlight affects vegetables, like putrefaction, and what is the chemical decomposition that happens under moonlight, right? Like that's something you can take it, like Ken Wheeler, Theory of Apophysis, was showing what magnets do to growing mushrooms and little plants and stuff like that. So I'm more of like, take a theory and figure out what to do with it, as opposed to like, take a theory and be like, they suck. NASA sucks, they're lying. I'm like, okay, they are. If they are, then they are. And then what? Like, you're gonna stop living? Or are you gonna do other things? So I kind of just wish we could like, and I don't want to say like, hey, not flat Earth, but like definitely electric universe. But it seems that things work this way, right? That's sort of where I'm coming from. When you look at the actual physical data, you look at the images that we're looking at right now, and you understand that fundamentally we understand electricity, we see electricity, it's right there in front of us. It's almost like avoiding the obvious. But can you imagine, like, a lot of people had the same experience when they came to Electric Universe for the first time. They're like, holy shit, I never thought of it like this. A ton of people have the same epiphany. And it truly is. It's just a way to look at the universe that empowers you versus a way to look at the universe which empowers a select group of people. MM says, what about magnets and mushrooms exactly? I got it. Yeah, being lied to by the government and science agencies and popular mechanics and Michio Kaku and David Wilcock and Graham Hancock and lots of people with weird names like that who just pile on the bullshit is really hurtful, because I think a lot of people are sincerely like interested in science, and they're just sensitive and they want to discover things and they want to understand things. And the government really thrives on trickle-down technology, so like keeping people at bay and never talking about expansive technology and never talking about, what I said earlier, like check out all of Neil deGrasse Tyson's videos. He never mentions Velikovsky. He never mentions Halton Arp. He never mentions Electric Universe or plasma cosmology, like almost never. I think he might have said something akin to like, oh, that crackpot something. And they're all like that. Like, go down the litany of these so-called science leaders or science community, and you'll see that people are either like unintentionally hiding information or intentionally obfuscating information. And both suck. So you got to think, like, what do you do? And maybe I have the answer that works for me, which is I allow everything to change, try not to be judged, and try and like learn some science for myself. Like, get a telescope, try and talk to people about it, learn stuff, calm down, and become more respectful with science, as opposed to being like so firm that like I know everything and you don't know shit. And if you say what I don't like, then I'm gonna like tell you to be just like me, or else. But nobody really understands that that's what they're doing. Like, if you look in conspiracy circles, there's a lot of like people writing sentences that basically all mean think like me, be like me, think like me, at the same time as they're saying like, you're wrong, you suck. And it's a weird cognitive dissonance of like aggression coupled with evangelism. But I think if you just recognize that that's the situation, then you can change it and say like, well, I don't like when people talk shit to me. I don't like when people call me stupid. So I should never do that to other people, because why would, like, I wouldn't want to deal with that. So that's one. And then two, when it comes to science is, the whole idea is adventure and fun and discovery and changing. And somehow the science that we have today is like, we can't change, but Einstein, no, but can't change. But he was like, no, can't change, you're crazy, crackpot. So it's become ridiculous, We should be able to talk about everything. Even if your current paradigm is flat Earth, maybe in 2 years it'll be torus Earth, like donut Earth or banana Earth. And then 10 years you're like, oh, I don't even think we live on Earth at all. Maybe Earth is actually Saturn and we're just looking in the mirror. Like, who the fuck knows? Like, it could be anything and you should be open to it. Or I would suggest being open to it because that makes it more fun. Some of the things you mentioned I've never heard of, and I'm quite clued up as I've been away from TV and radio. Please check out my older videos, check out the description of this video for links to really great channels that are very small, that are humble, that are doing real experiments in the laboratory, and not taking NASA data and saying, NASA data is saying that this, but they're this. Like Jacob Gable literally got a vacuum chamber and he zaps clay with like high voltage discharge and he creates craters. And then I can take that data and show you guys real footage of the moon that looks like that electric discharge in the laboratory, right? And then somebody who knows like how hexagonal crystal lattices are formed because of electric discharge will say, oh, look, here's the math behind how hexagons expand from a central point and look for the path of least resistance. And that's how things can be like moved forward. Right now, most people are just being like regurgitating David Icke reptilian shit because it's I don't know, it's like a catch-all for like cynicism in a way. Science is now mostly about like, man, I can never get there, and man, we can never get to the speed of light, and man, aliens would think we suck, and man, everything is that we're looking at in space is actually dead, and we're looking into the past. It's this weird like veiled interpretation that makes us feel that makes me particularly feel so distant and disengaged and disconnected from the universe. Electric Universe, though, says no, like we're completely connected. You remember when you were a kid and stars looked like they were connected by filaments, which absolutely happened to me when I was living in dark skies as a kid. I was like, man, it looks like they're all connected through like these little current filaments. And my dad would be like, nah, you know, NASA's been there and they're so far away you're just imagining it. I was like, no, they're filaments. They're like, I didn't use filaments, but I was like, they're all connected. And then you grow up and science is like, hell no, space is like electrically neutral. These things are isolated islands in space and we're isolated in the Goldilocks cosmological constant zone, and like we're flung out to the vast depths of the billions and billions of miles, and we're a pale blue dot flung out, orphaned, right? This language that we know now of depressing, like super disconnected, evocative, like makes you nostalgic, but also paralyzed because you're like, I'll never know this. I can't even count to 100,000, let alone 24 trillion. We can never get there. So it's this weird kind of mixed sci-fi, Marvel, Star Trek, Star Wars, any number of shows, universe where these guys are trekking through space and there are missiles in space and there's sound in space and there's all this cool shit in space, whereas your real space program like can't get into low Earth orbit, but also walked on the moon and called people from Earth 50 years ago. There's a huge disconnect. Of course there's a divisiveness with the moon missions, like of course. But like how do you fix that without like convincing people one-to-one? I think by giving people a platform right here, for example, or just in your own life, where you're like, hey, let's be polite and let me not evangelize to you. Let me not tell you how to think, and let me not tell you to be just like me. I'm just going to be like, what do you think? Do you think this is cool? I think this. What if we're both wrong? That's cool. What if we do this? I think if science moved towards that, we would be much healthier as a human race. and more people would be interested in science. So, man, I'm talking a lot tonight. I got a lot on my mind. Finally got to this point where I'm actually saying what I wanted to say from the beginning of the show, which was, there's got to be something else, but we got to find it. Let's see what's going on in the chat. NASA has the YouTube live stream from the ISS. Like, you know, you can't front that looks realistic. There are stars in the background, right? And it's very possible that there's like a null zone of magnetism where objects can orbit the Earth with very minimal fuel, or plasma ion engines. So something like the ISS I don't think is unrealistic. Yeah, it also could be a tiny object, like the ISS could be fake. But I've seen it though. Like, I'm not gonna even suggest that because I've actually seen and taken footage of the ISS and Hubble, and it seems like they're real, insofar as you can take a picture of them, and they exist where data records say they will exist. Now, physically, are they amazing? Yes, they're incredibly astounding, and Hubble is just like beyond. But I've taken footage of them just like the transparent moon, there's definitely an ISS and there's definitely a Hubble of some sort. Yeah, back to the tunes. few more questions and then I'm gonna call it because I actually haven't even eaten yet. I need to eat so badly right now. Munchies are creeping, but it's been super fun. Love the EU as well. Like I said, it's not the be-all and end-all because there's so much more to discover through that filter of empowerment, but that we're all connected. Like a really big one for me is the fact that we're not looking into the past, possibly, when we look at our galaxies and quasars and space. Light doesn't travel. I really feel like that. And it's just like a perturbation in the ether that we interpret. So that's a really fascinating concept that has so many implications, and even Thunderbolt's project barely talks about that. But if you work on some of their theories and take some of Halton Arp's stuff, you take some of Ken Wheeler's stuff, and you take a little Proto-Saturnian stuff, and you mix it all together, you start getting a really totally different, totally interesting, and you're part of it too. So you can interpret what you will because you know lightning, you know thunder, you know thunderstorms, you believe your own eyes when you see geometry in water. You can't get away from it. It's intrinsic. And that's what it really comes down to, is like you can see all these patterns recursively. Yeah, Shockwave, I'm glad you've been chatting. It's so cool. Like, my regulars always know that I talk about this as much as I can. Sometimes it's like, I feel like I may be preaching to the choir or like repeating myself to my regulars. So I try not to do it so many times, but this is stuff that I watch every day as much as I can. And then when I do this show, I'm like, more real moon footage. And then you go online, and that's like what I feel like is such a lacking thing right now. And so I feel very empowered when I bring that to the public. And then the music is just like icing. So creepin' munchies, hell yeah, Ellie, you know how I do. But I thought this was gonna be a quick one, but 3 hours per usual. Take back smoke, take back theories. I feel like I needed to talk about some of the flat earth stuff. Like, if you have flat earth questions, ask me right now, because I'm gonna try not to talk about it for too many shows. Not because it, whatever, people can believe what they want, but because like, it is one of those things that I'm pretty sure it's really not the case, and talking about it really endlessly means I can't talk about new things like potentially Mars and the moon interacting in front of humans a few thousand years ago. Like, that's cool, that's so crazy. So much more interesting to me than the shape of the Earth right now. So yeah, throw them at me if you want. If not, all good. Hell yeah, Shockwave. I try and stream if the weather's good and I can see the space, I can see the moon, then I'm probably streaming. Is sort of I try not to set a schedule because it's impossible to stick to. I just gotta go with the flow. No great red spot tonight. But I can't tell if the storm last night was smaller. It feels like it is a little bit smaller, but I feel like Jupiter and Saturn both look smaller to me in general. Like, maybe they're more at their, what is it, perihelion? Aphelion. Eat All Your Fish says, there's an ice wall, change my mind. That's a tricky one because you really have to go there and experience it, and I actually haven't been to the ice wall. I'm kidding, I haven't taken any major cruise ships or cargo ships to the Antarctic, so that's a really tough one. But I will say that I just there are certain points in flat Earth that are not really debatable. They're these kind of endless cycle debates. For example, like the curvature. Where's the curve, right? The really the holy grail that started it all. But really, there's a curve in the videos, and then people say, nope, thank you, there's no curve. I don't see a curve. So it's really like belief at this point. So the ice wall is a very sexy propaganda Hollywood movie concept with Nazis. Like, it could be possible, but I don't think it's like an ice wall that encases like a pancake Earth, right? Like, but I think if Antarctica is pretty interesting. Like, I would definitely think that specifically here, I know. So Admiral Byrd, Operation High Jump, and all those theories that kind of have intertwined with Flat Earth have made it more appealing than it really is. But I actually think that that High Jump and all the stuff that you see, the Admiral Byrd stories and Hollow Earth and Nazis are really in line sort of with Electric Universe, but not really, they don't really prove Flat Earth. But somehow, because it's very appealing, Flat Earth has somehow kind of mixed up the mythology of like an ice wall with the Nazis and the hollow, like going inside the poles. There's a whole kind of muddling of a whole bunch of different theories. And so when I think something is that kind of mired and that kind of inconsistent, I kind of feel like it's one of those topics that just goes around in circles, and Flat Earthers, the Flat Earth channels like it because it's endless content, because it's endlessly speculative. It's a little bit like contemporary cosmology, right? That's why, like, when you watch these, if you're an Electric Universe follower and you watch contemporary science, and you hear the way Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about science, it's almost annoying to listen to what he's saying, because he just sounds, I don't know, there's this weird kind of disconnect. And that's how I feel a little bit about like the ice wall debate, the curvature debate, the water, space is water, moon's a hologram. These things are easily like either provable or completely useless to talk about, because like you can never find out. In a way, Apollo to me is 50-50 on that. In a way, I don't think you can ever prove it one way or another. Government will never admit to it, and no one can ever really tell. Like, I certainly won't be able to check for sure. So it's one of those things I debate constantly as to whether I should ever talk about Apollo again, because it seems like a circular discussion. I almost never talk about JFK or trutherism or any of ufology, because I'm almost certain those are 360 arguments. And why waste time on that? Yeah, Fresh75 says, people knock Flat Earth so much I've watched it grow by the people for 7 years. So it's very simple. Like, if you look at popular things right now, there are a lot of popular things that suck. A lot. Like, so many popular so-called things that grow quickly and get famous, suck. I don't need to list out who they are, but they're not good. Some are, but a lot aren't. So the fact that Flat Earth is popular doesn't make it right or wrong. It just makes it popular. Crystal Grace says, I always enjoy hearing what you have to say. Thank you. The music and the chat. I got into researching Flat Earth quite a bit, but I am not convinced. Operation Fishbowl and the events leading up to it are weird. Yeah, Operation Fishbowl, as opposed to Operation High Jump, which is Admiral Byrd and Hollow Earth. Fishbowl and Starfish and a bunch of different ones like that are basically high altitude nuclear tests, which I used to think was like people trying to blow out of the firmament and break the glass sky. I thought some of those Flat Earth concepts were interesting, to be honest. But you realize that they were just blowing up high altitude nuclear missiles at basically this magnetic juncture, which is around the Kármán line, about 150,000 feet, where all Dwayne Kellam's balloons blow up, where essentially the ISS and a bunch of other things orbit, the first magnetic null zone within the shells of magnetism. I think this is all my personal opinion anyway. I'm just qualifying that, but yeah. So high altitude nuclear tests were extremely, like, honestly, that's really, it sucks, to be honest. I personally feel so, like, offended by those tests and the fact that they're not super public, and the fact that they release footage like that, whether it's real or not, who knows, it's probably real, and it is offensive. It sucks that the government or the corporations were able to do something so destructive to Earth in the name of just testing things. But I don't know if that even has anything to do with, like, the shape of the Earth or space is fake. You know what I mean? I feel like there are a lot of conspiracies online that are very interesting that have nothing to do with one another, but because, like, channels need new content all the time, like especially Flat Earth and I mean especially NASA too, like not NASA but popular science. They keep mining the same thing over and over, and Flat Earth does the same thing as well. They kind of mine the same concepts over and over, but you can't really prove a lot of these things, so ultimately it'll go nowhere and you just occupy your own time. Yeah. Another big one for Flat Earth, it's very simple to look at on this channel, is to look at Jupiter and the Great Red Storm, and to just even consider that that's even happening, and where that would go. It really seems like it's going around to the back of Jupiter, you know? I mean, it's just like, I know that it's very compelling to think about Flat Earth, but really when you can see a planet rotate, it really makes sense, and then you can move past it and learn new things. That's where I'm coming from. Critical thinking is power. Knowledge is also power, but yeah, right. It's not wisdom. True. Wisdom takes experience, though. You can't just gain wisdom. I mean, you can, I guess, but it takes time. It does. Eat All Your Fish says, look up Flat Earth on YouTube and look up what comes up. Smack my head, this info control BS is getting way out of hand. Yeah, I agree, but also, like, I don't know. It bothers me too that it's gotten, like, on Netflix and popular. But at the same time, like I said, it's very, very simple. Things that are popular are not necessarily good. Things that are popular are not necessarily good. They're not necessarily bad either, but they're not necessarily good. Sorry, what's not true? I missed what you were talking about. Constantine, what's going on, says, my opinion on this matter of flat Earth. I can see that all the other planets are spheres as far as I've seen them myself here with my own eyes. I think the curvature calcs is off and the Earth is bigger. It's very possible that the Earth is still growing, right? There are theories out there that actually accommodate for a lot of the inconsistencies, which I agree with, but it doesn't mean that the Earth itself is like a pancake. Like, the shape doesn't really make a lot of sense, and the actual science of it is very divisive. It just makes people aggressive and it isolates people, and that's not a science that I can get behind. Look at Electric Universe. It answers a lot of questions. It offers a lot of controversial ideas. Sky Scholar, all the sorry, I got so loud. All the videos I link in my description, those guys. There's some modesty, there's interest, there's excitement. It's a different type of science. Listen to Flat Earth channels versus Electric Universe, Thunderbolts Project, and you'll see it's a different tone of voice. It's not lecturing you. It's not insulting you. And then listen to Flat Earth. There's a lot of insulting. There's the same stuff that we see in popular science that everybody in Flat Earth seems to hate, but then acts just like it. So, yeah, nobody knows until we die. I feel like it's so true. Like, people don't really keep death close enough. It's so important to really understand that, for me at least, that death is, this life is just a certain modality of the ether, and that it will go into a different state or phase when I'm dead. And that's incredible and exciting. So yeah, Earth probably is growing, Constantine, in my opinion. Like probably the moon is growing, and planets as well, growing and contracting based on electrical mechanics, is what I think. Fresh says, why you people want knock flat Earth? It's for the people and it's about exploring Antarctica. Why people want to stop this? No, go. I love Antarctica. I'm all about that. But it doesn't, just because Antarctica is interesting to go to, and it seems like rich people and scientists control areas of Antarctica, which is true, doesn't make the Earth flat. You know what I mean? It's tied together because it's an easy way to sell a larger concept, but it doesn't make it so, you know? Constantine says, yes, says, could be a pair, Electric Universe, I am not familiar. I have lots of links, like I said in my description, for Thunderbolt's project. Like, I'm still really learning a lot about Electric Universe, so I talk about it from just my perspective. And I'm not sure, maybe you had a question. Could be a pair, maybe a pair of Birkeland currents. Duplicat says, expansion tectonics, all orbiting bodies grow. Electricity builds elements from hydrogen. Exactly, thank you. Thank you for helping me tonight, everybody, for Shockwave and Duplicat, and throwing me good questions. And eat all your fish. Fresh says, you think you know about FE, you don't, obviously. I don't know, I hope you're not mad. I said keep asking me questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm telling you what's going on online while I'm also showing you a real picture of Jupiter. Not a lot of Flat Earth channels actually show real footage, and the ones that do, I feel like change their attitude about Flat Earth relatively quickly. That's not to say there aren't a lot of channels that take P900, or is it P9000? It's over 9,000. Z-Proxy, Cosmic Surfer, a bunch of people are definitely, I think, flat earthers, and they take footage. So one way or another, for me, it shows that it's not flat. For others, it might be flat, and that's where you want to be in your life. For me, I've explained why I don't want to indulge in it, because it takes up so much time, and it's very circular. Oddly, flat Earth is very circular. You don't get very far. So you say 7 years, there are just more people, but there are no new ideas. You know what I mean? Electric Universe, there are people actually doing experiments, and we're actually looking at Jupiter right now, which is real stuff. I mean, at least in my opinion. You know, I know it might sound disrespectful, but ooh, I don't know if Crow 777's a flat earther. I don't think so. I think he talks to flat earthers and he entertains some of the ideas. Or actually, I think flat earthers entertain some of Crow's ideas, but Crow has his own thing going on. And I don't really think he's like a traditional flat earther, but I could be wrong. I definitely chatted with him on the first episode of his podcast, and he's been on a lot of my earlier videos when I captured the lunar wave and transits. He was all over that, and we've connected. So he's a very interesting man and has great ideas, and also some ideas that I disagree with. But yeah, I don't know if he's a flat earther. Oh, right. Constantine says the shape of, that Neil deGrasse Tyson referencing the oblate spheroid nature of the world, right? So I remember this coming up everywhere, and it's still something that that people stick to. So can you really yourself right now go take a picture of Earth from space? No. So why are you spending all this time worried about it? That's all I'm trying to say. Like, you can't do anything. And also Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of those people who lies daily about everything. Why would you believe anything he said? You know what I mean? Like, think about Flat Earth, how it gets stuck in the circular loop. It both hates Neil deGrasse Tyson, but spends endless time talking about him. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's apparent enough, but it happens all the time. You spend all this time talking about how much you hate NASA while you're surfing their channel for clips to play. The dome, the whole enclosed dome theory with the Fox TV show and the tones, and then you also had the Truman Show. Very compelling, very sexy propaganda. Interesting. Of course you want to think you're in a sort of like cage being looked at. Everybody, I mean, that seems like one of those fantasies in a way. But in fact, you can't really test that. If somebody's powerful enough to keep us literally able to take airplanes to different countries, man, then that technology is so far beyond anything you could discover that, like, again, you have to be in awe of those people. Like, anybody who could create this planet Jupiter for everybody on Earth to be able to look at the same time is so incredible that, like, yeah, I'm happily enslaved. Happily enslaved. Corey Connolly says he is an actor when it comes to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Look, the oblate spheroid makes sense, but we don't see it. That's what's really confusing by it, and I understand why flat earthers find that very compelling. It's very confusing behavior to say that the Earth is an oblate spheroid, and then to take the Lagrange point footage of the Earth from the distance that looks perfectly circular, like perfectly circular. So yeah, it's very confusing. I don't know the answer to that, but I certainly know that, like, you can't really prove it one way or another. You can just look at it and be annoyed, or you can look at it and move past it and just do what you can do, right? It's super freaking annoying, but it doesn't mean the Earth is flat, right? Like, not right. That's what I think. Like, I think things are way too conflated. If Neil deGrasse Tyson's lying about the shape of Earth from space, it doesn't make the Earth flat. It just makes him a liar. Which, of course, he's an entertainer. He's supposed to lie. He's supposed to portray a character. Just like Bill Nye, and really now just like Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson and all these people who look like they're real so-called people are playing personas, which is fine, but it doesn't make them correct, and it doesn't make the Earth flat. What's crazier is that we can see Jupiter right now. I've been harping on it all night, but it's crazy that we can just see space at all, or that we're alive at all. Anyway, like, I gotta be honest, here's a totally different take on flat Earth since I'm talking about it. So, as much as for me, I know that flat Earth is not real, and that's not what I'm working on. That aside, I do despise seeing comments that are like preemptively aggressing flat earthers. It happens all over the place online. It happens in YouTube comments especially, almost defending the status quo preemptively to flat earthers who may come to the video. Now, granted, a lot of flat earthers are bots, a lot of them are hackers, whatever, a lot of them are just like real people, but this preemptive aggression towards science debate is what kind of makes people divides everybody. And it really sucks. Like, I don't know what to say to those people, but I don't know how it's better to ostracize and ridicule people who are sincerely questioning things. And that doesn't mean that all flat earthers are sincerely questioning things. I think a lot of it is algorithmic bots I think at least 25, maybe to 50% of flat Earth is actually like artificial intelligence. And a lot of people don't want to believe that, but I'm almost certain it is. But further than that, yeah. Yo, Vicky, take care. Have a great day tomorrow. I can't believe it. Is it Monday today? Tuesday? Is that the crazy stream? Yeah. Yeah, they say that it bulges at the equator, but there are really no pictures, one-to-one pictures that show that. So I understand why people find that confusing. So Fresh closes it with, okay, well, thank my ape globe friends. God created Earth, created my Earth. On my deathbed, I will ask. But, okay. Well, I tried to want to have a discussion. I think it's cool to disagree, and, just got to respect everybody. Vicky, take care. Yeah. Shockwave, love even FE people, or just love people for talking and thinking. Not everybody who's a flat earther is a bad person. A lot of them are just people who are seeking and are on a journey, and it's up to every one of us to be kind to as many people as we can. Like, I don't think you can be kind to I mean, I'd hope you can be kind to everybody, hopefully, but even if you can, even if you feel like you can't, try. And I think it kind of also hinges on this whole idea of, like, if somebody blah blah blah, like, I would punch them, versus thinking that if you felt like you had to punch somebody but you didn't, being the better move, being the more efficient and more kind and smarter move is to withhold the punch. It's not to punch somebody. So this whole idea of Buzz Aldrin punching Bart Sibrel, like, people stand and laud Buzz for doing that. I think it's highly, like, I just think it's just offensive, even though he may have deserved it. It's just like, don't resort to that type of behavior. But I know a lot of people think that that's cool. I feel like, there are areas to explore that in wrestling and boxing and sports. But in science, I think we can really avoid fistfights and calling each other names and insulting one another as much as possible. It's work. It takes a lot more work to not insult somebody, but that's more satisfying and better for the world. If you want to, if you're an armchair activist that, like, doesn't really recycle, and it just feels like, like you just want to make a difference. A difference is kind of speaking politely to people about science and encouraging that, I think, is just something good that people can do. Did Fresh say they're leaving? I guess they are. I said 50%, not 90. 50% of flat Earth. Well, not flat earthers, I guess flat Earth comments. I mean, if you look at it, like, I can see patterns. There's either people are completely in sync in terms of the way the public media is. That's, I don't know, maybe that's a version of a bot when you're in lockstep with a bunch of strangers. I think what's so cool about Electric Universe is that it's completely not lockstep. It's like everybody's got a little avenue, and they can explore a different part of the world and all interconnect at some points, but they don't all have to walk in lockstep. So I avoid things like that. When science says, follow me or else, I know it stinks. Anyway, I have nothing against religion or Jesus, or the fact that you think that anybody feels like Jesus saved them. That's totally valid. I feel that that's more valid than flat Earth in a way. Flat Earth is way more divisive than people who actively are just spiritual and feel like Jesus Christ saved them. Jesus Christ ate all his fish. That's true. Or people ate all JC's fish. But he could have been anybody. He could have been a carpenter. He could have been this prophet. He could have been a mushroom. He could have been a little elf that somebody saw when they took mushrooms. Yo, what up, Rick Dangerous? I think Jesus said, turn the other cheek. Well, you would hope that that the person also assaulting would have their own piece of advice, which is, withhold the punch because you wouldn't want to be punched, right? Like, fuck that. I've seen it. I've seen big dudes take a huge punch and then really, it changes their lives. So why get into that unless you're very destructive? But that also exists, so I'm not saying that it can't exist, but I just don't think it's cool, in science at least. Maybe Jesus was a talking fish and people were doing tons of peyote and they're like, Jesus, that fish is fucking talking. That's such a dad Mel Brooks joke. Look, bubbles in space, sonoluminescence, magnetobubbles is a great line of thinking. Lots of cool stuff there. Andrew P. Hall talking about red spot and how the West Americas was carved out by a storm like that one. I love that. I love that video. I linked to it. I love the way he talks about things. He's just a calm dude and he's really has his shit down. The whole vertical wind current, and you can see the imprint of the wind on the land. Like as above, so below, in a completely physical sense. It's awesome. Super awesome. And what a shame, Michael, what's his name, Steinbacher. Man, I'm a little toasty, I guess. He died, I guess, of cancer, and he was doing some very interesting work, and he was actually encouraging Billy Yelverton to try different things, and that's kind of where a lot of the lab stuff came from. Rick Dangerous says, in the beginning, G-O-D, God created Earth and drugs. Probably created drugs first and then imagined the Earth, and we're just dreaming right now on a dream boat. All right, peeps, this is it for me. This has been a super duper fun one, and my neck is paying for it right now, but real good. Supersonic Winds, exactly. Shockwave, thank you. Awesome having you on the stream. Eat all your fish. Thanks, Rick Dangerous. Fresh, I hope this was a good conversation, but you're free to believe what you want. Ellie Wynn, it is Fake Saturday, but I gotta go and eat some food and ice my shoulder. Ice my shoulder. Corey Connolly, thank you so much. Mary, I know you left already. Duplicat, as always. Oh, Electric Universe. See you on the chance. Vicky, I know you stopped by for a second. Crystal Grice was around, and Mistaken Mystery, and Genghis Khan, and I know Anthony was here earlier. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Catch you soon. This was an epic one for the records. Share it with your friends. Stay wise, stay brave, and go give all the small EU channels some love. They're all linked in the description of the video. And what else? 8, 9, so in 3 days there's going to be the Jupiter-Moon conjunction. I hope the skies will be clear. Tons of new music. I'm going to post at least an album worth of music this week. And yeah, you guys are awesome. Stay well. Bye. Let's ride out to something. What we got? Cactus Dance. All right. Peace, everybody. Bye. Bum, bum, bum.